Buenas noches. We're going to start our meeting. This is our yearly organizational meeting where we do our swearing, our appointments, the swearing in, and our calendar. So if you can bear with us for a few minutes while we get through some formalities. First, we're going to be doing our swearing in of our elected board of directors by our City of Berkeley City Clerk, Mark Newmanville. And our newly elected is Judy Appel and myself, Beatriz Leiva Cutler. Re-elected.
Okay. I state your name.
I, Beatriz Leiva Cutler,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear.
that I
We can say it together.
say it,
In unison.
Do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
That I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the United States of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Gracias.
And Beatriz, 6 years right here.
You fill in the rest? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Judy, that's your certificate of election, and Beatriz, that's your certificate of election.
Thank you.
All right, you're very welcome.
Oops. So now we will do the appointment of chair, vice chair, secretary, and clerk. And can I have a motion for our chair, for the president of the Berkeley School Board?
I am very honored to move that we elect Director Ty Alper as our new president, Director Josh Daniels as our vice president, and outgoing president Beatriz Leiva Cutler as our clerk. And also that we elect Donald Evans as our secretary.
Can I have a second? We have a motion by Director Pell and a second.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Congratulations. So the president will now conduct the rest of the meeting. Thank you very much.
There you go. Do we need to switch these? Should we switch these?
I can be tied with that.
You can be tied.
I mean. So I want to thank you, Director Leiva Cutler, for an incredible year of service on behalf of the district And I wanted to say that I think out of all of my colleagues on the board, I've known you the longest, I've worked with you the longest, and in every interaction I've had with you about the schools, I've been so inspired by how you put students first. And we all talk about putting students first, and I think we have that as a value that we all share. You demonstrate it, I think, in everything you do. And we are so grateful and fortunate to have had your leadership for the past year. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I believe our superintendent has a presentation he'd like to make.
So on behalf of the board, the students here at Berkeley Unified School District, in appreciation for your contribution and what you've done on this board as president, I'd like to present you with this.
Thank you. See if I can take it out. Thank you. Thank you so much. You know, my mother only had a third grade education. My father had a fifth grade education. And I see them in the audience and how proud they would be and how far we've come as a family. So it means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So bear with me here, but the first thing I think we are doing is approving the proposed board meeting calendar, item 5.3. So do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Motion by Director Daniels.
Vice President.
Vice President Daniels. That's going to take me a while.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
I'll make
Second.
a
Oh.
Second
got
by
this.
Director Appel. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item is the approval of proposed committee and school assignments for 2017. Item 5.4, do I have a motion to approve the committee and school assignments?
I'll make the motion to approve the
Motion
media assignments.
by Director Leyva Cutler. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Director Petra, say it again? Sylvie, sorry. Director Sylvie, all in favor?
Aye.
Great. We will,
Do your meeting calendar?
we did the meeting calendar.
Both? Oh, sorry, never mind. You're right. Never mind. Got it.
Stay with us, Vice President Daniels. Okay.
So sleepless nights.
Now, do I have a motion? No, we're going to consider the agenda. Oh, wait, no, sorry.
The report.
Good evening. It is. Yeah. Welcome to the December 7th meeting of the Berkeley School Board. If you want to follow along on our online agenda, you can do so on your phone, or you can borrow a computer from our board recorder, Ms. Chiras. And I'd like to remind everyone that our board meeting is broadcasting live on YouTube and over the radio on 89.3 FM and on TV on Comcast Cable Channel 33. Okay, so now I will call the open session of tonight's meeting to order at 7:40. For the record, closed session began at 6 o'clock. Would our board recorder please share with the community members present our process for translation at this meeting?
Buenas noches y bienvenidos. Si hay alguien que necesita traducción de inglés al español porque desea dirigirse a la mesa directiva, favor de hacérmelo saber para proveerle ese servicio. Muchas gracias. Director Leyva Cutler,
Presente.
Student Director Alonta Keys, Director Karen Hemphill,
Here.
Student Director Petra Sylvie,
Here.
Director Judy Appel,
Here.
Vice President Josh Daniels,
Here.
President Ty Alper.
Present. Thank you. We will now approve the agenda. Are there any requested changes to the agenda?
No, I don't think so.
You good? Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Director Leyva Cutler. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Director Appel. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The agenda has been approved. I will now report from our closed session. Item 3.1, conference with legal counsel. We received an update from legal counsel. Item 3.2, conference with real property negotiators. We provided direction to the superintendent. Item 3.3, collective bargaining. We provided direction to the superintendent. And item 3.4, we passed to the next meeting. Okay. I'd like to now provide a brief overview of the meeting for tonight. First, we will hear 30 minutes of public comment. Then we will hear from our unions and our district committees. And then we'll have comments from board members and the superintendent. Then we will consider our consent calendar, which are items that the board may vote to approve on all in one motion. Then we will hear action items, which are items the board will vote on. Tonight we'll be taking action on 2 items, a policy to protect undocumented students, for which we've allocated 30 minutes, and approval of our first interim budget report, for which we have also allocated 30 minutes. Then we will hear 2 items for discussion. Tonight we'll be discussing the imposition of developer fees, for which we've allocated 30 minutes, and then a discussion of our board meeting norms and agreements for the year, for which we've allocated 15 minutes. At the end of the meeting, there will be another opportunity for public comment, so if you don't get to speak at the beginning of the meeting, you can stay and speak at the end of the meeting. The next item on the agenda is 30 minutes for public comment. The Vice President and I have organized the speaking requests by agenda item. We will rotate through the relevant agenda items so that we can do our best to hear from at least one person on each agenda item. We will generally hear first from our students. If your name is called, you may cede your time to another speaker. To do so, please stand up if your name is called and state your name and indicate to whom you're ceding your time. By ceding your time, you give up your opportunity to speak, and no one can later cede their time to you to speak. Tonight, because we have a lot of speaker cards, we're limiting the speaking to 2 minutes to accommodate as many people as we can in the 30 minutes. Nobody can speak more than 2 minutes, even if someone wants to cede you their time. And the reason is we want to try to allow for as many people in the 30 minutes. As the president of the board, it's my discretion to allow for extra time for those who need translation or have other speech needs. When there's 1 minute left, the light at the lectern will turn yellow. When your time has elapsed, the light at the lectern will turn red, and you will hear a beep. If you're still speaking when your time is up, please finish up your sentence, but do not speak beyond your time. We understand that there are very important issues and that many people feel passionate about them. But in order to be fair to all the speakers and so that we can hear as many speakers as possible in 30 minutes, I will ask you to stop and turn off the mic if necessary. To keep things moving, I ask that the speaker who's next in line come up and stand up against the wall and then come forward when it's your turn. And I apologize in advance if I mispronounce anybody's name. During the public comment, the board does not respond directly to comments or to questions made during the comment. The board members and the superintendent and staff take notes during public comment and often will follow up with the speaker after the meeting. All right. We will now hear from, Lily Spencer, why don't you all come up and you're going to have 6 minutes for all of you.
Yeah.
Okay.
For all of these?
Yeah.
This is it for all of them.
Yeah, we just check that they're on page. Go ahead. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Miley Spencer. I'm a BHS Stop Harassing member, and I'm here on behalf of Anaya, a survivor of sexual harassment. This is her story. On November 16th, I was sitting in 6th period doing classwork when I got an email from an email account that said your secret admirer. I opened it, and here's what it said. Hey, Anaya, I just wanted to tell you how you are and how attracted I am to you. Every time I see you, I'm just like, damn, I want to grab that ass and bend you over my knee and spank you. I've been feeling this way for quite some time. It's just the thought of putting my face all up in your ass while I finger you. I know that you're probably creeped out by this and have the right to be. I just wanted to get this off my chest since freshman year. You're so effing thick, sexy, and smart. I'm a little bit embarrassed to tell you who I am. Just know I've been in school with you since freshman year. But if you ever want to know more about me and who I am, just reply. Again, you are so sexy. When I got the email, I immediately left everything in my class and went to see Mr. Bolt because I trusted him to help me. I told him I was freaking out, and we sent the email to other teachers so they would have a digital copy and know this happened. He told me he would do everything he could to help me, and he needed Ms. Schwang, our VP, to know what happened. Ms. Schwang called me in that afternoon. I showed her the email. We talked about how to figure out who this was. We called both my parents to inform them what happened. Thank you.
I'm Mackenzie. I will be continuing the story. After she told me that she had never dealt with something like this before, we talked about replying to the email, and she advised against it. She said his email sounded genuine and non-aggressive, like she was trying to offer me a consolation or something. I feel like those two words don't belong together. If it were genuine, it would be very aggressive. All I could think is that if this person has been thinking it this way for 4 years, I had no idea the extent they were willing to go to and if they wanted to put their words into actions. That didn't make sense to me. I wanted to know exactly who thought about me this way and if they might want to act on it, or if there is other history of this happening with other girls. She said she didn't think it would be safe to contact him and would open doors. She said we should take the weekend and think about next steps before acting. From that meeting on, I was never contacted by her formally again for follow-up or next steps of safety planning. I did run into her coming back from lunch later the following week, and she said that they were planning an interview with a student they suspected, but that I didn't need to be worried because the student wasn't in any of my classes. But she also said they weren't sure who it was. I asked her if after the interview, if she could tell me who it was, and she said she didn't know if she could do that. She informed me that another student had received a similar email and that I wasn't the only one being targeted. Then she told me that they had blocked that email account from emailing any of the students' accounts at BHS, so I didn't have to worry about it anymore. Like that was that, as if they couldn't create another anonymous email and do it again. Thank you.
My name is Justice, and I'll be continuing the story. For a brief moment, I felt a little safer, but then I realized there was no way for me to know who it was. I felt like they made the decision for me, and it made me feel small, like I wasn't capable to know what was best. If she would have ever talked to me about it, I would have repeated what I said in the first place. Then I wanted to reply to the email so that I could know who it was, so I wouldn't have to be afraid of what was around the corner, in the hallways, on the way home, or sitting next to me in class. What she did was a violation of trust, and she overused her power. She wasn't thinking about me anymore. She was thinking about how to make it go away for her. So I have to spend the next 6 months looking over my shoulder, never knowing if I'm safe. My dad made multiple attempts to contact Ms. Schwang over the 2-week period following the incident. He wrote in huge letters on her board outside her office, "Call me." He was then informed by Ms. Schwang that the case was passed on to Mr. Passero. Mr. Passero has never contacted me or my father on this matter. It was at this point we reached out for help from BHS Stop Harassing. My dad and I met with Rebecca Levinson, who told us about our rights, something the district never did. She talked about the difference between a report and a complaint. She told me that we have a Title IX coordinator whose job is it to follow up on these cases and investigate them. We never got information about my rights under federal law. She explained that the district not only violated federal law, but its own policies and procedures. She told me that I would have a safety plan which, to her mind, would have included knowing for sure who wanted to harm me in these ways. While we were meeting, when she asked what I needed and I wanted to do, I told her I wanted to share my story and make sure that for all these cases after me that they would be informed of their rights and be given the support they deserve. After we met, I went back to class and I couldn't focus in class, so I left after a few minutes and went back home to one of my teachers and cried. I cried because I have rights from USD that they didn't acknowledge and realized that I didn't feel safe at all anymore. Thank you.
My name is Anaya Williams, and I'm going to be finishing my story. My question tonight is why? Why did you do that to me? And what about everybody else? What about the other girls? Why didn't you send an email to parents and students to see if it happened to them or someone that they loved? Who was to be held accountable for making me feel more unsafe and to have to cut off my ability to know for sure who wanted to hurt me? If you care about what happened to me at all, please hear what I have to say about what must change. We need someone who is kind, who understands sexual harassment, bullying, and sexual harm cases, and has your back as you navigate this. Someone who has a background in behavioral health and safety planning. We have no one to turn to with these skills. Please, hire someone and make it their responsibility. I want there to be a protocol about who knows about an incident outside of who a student tells, and it should be a clear chain of command. My information was shared without my consent with people who never followed up and had no expertise in how to keep me safe. We need to survey students about how many others this has happened to, about how many have experienced harassment, sexual harm, rape, date violence, because those are numbers that you cannot deny. This did happen to me, and it will continue to happen to others until you enforce the policies and laws that are in place.
Thank you. Thank you. Rich Prue. Rich Prue, and then Ms. Trahan.
I know that a night like tonight, summer seems very far away, but I have some exciting news in that regard to share with you. First, let me talk about the summer slide, the well-documented effect that during summer breaks contribute greatly to the achievement gap. Malcolm Gladwell and Outliers provides data to show that the summer problem is a major reason why low-income African-American youth do poorly in school. In a 2007 American Sociological Review article, they found that about 2/3 of the 9th grade academic achievement gap between economically disadvantaged and advantaged teens can be explained by summer learning loss during elementary school years. The good news is that summer school has been shown to stop and even reverse summer slide. A recent study of California schools by Summer Matters showed things like increased vocabulary skills, increasing instructional grade level by over 1/3 of a grade, improved attitude towards reading, improved reading ability, and that summer school decreased absenteeism in the fall. BUSD does not currently provide direct funding for summer school, but chiefly through taking advantage of BEARS funding, BUSD has been able to build a small summer school program of about 500 students over the past 5 years. BUSD has never studied the effect of BUSD's summer school program on elementary school students and its impact on closing the achievement gap until now. Last week, BUSD hired a public policy graduate student to conduct this study. With all the immediate pressing concerns on the district, thinking prospectively can be very difficult. And I am very grateful to everyone who made this happen. Very grateful. In particular, I want to name some of the BUSD staff. Dr. Evans, who is responsible for greenlighting this study over a year and a half ago. Superintendent Scuderi, who passed this on to Pat Sadler, who's been wonderful, and her staff, Erin Jorgensen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prue. Ms. Trahan, Valerie Trahan, and then Maria Elena Rodas.
Good evening, community. Good evening, school board members. When myself and a group of employees last year met with Ty Alper, we discussed the feasibility of the board hiring its own staff to curb the criminal behavior of the administration. Ty Alper rejects this idea, stating that it would be difficult because of competing interests. The competing interest that Alper references is the inherent conflict of interest regarding the administration as it relates to personal power and criminal behavior. This concept, unfortunately, is a thesis of Donald Evans' doctoral dissertation on micropolitics. According to Mr. Evans, micropolitics infers that administrators commit crimes to appease their politics. In this light, micropolitics explains why Judy Appel calls the Peace and Justice Commission demanding they not support Yvette Falarca, and then lying at the previous board meeting saying she doesn't discuss personnel matters. Teacher Zora Tammer gets attacked. Teacher Joseph Awamba gets attacked. Compliance Officer Bev Bueno was fired for exposing malfeasance in district practices. The reason students get interrogated after speaking at board meetings. Generally speaking, personnel actions are an excuse to violate the civil rights of employees and students alike. Micropolitics demands that the board and the administration violate the Ed Code, Labor Code, and commit crimes against the students and employees. The premise of Dr. Evans' thesis must be defeated. If not, the lawsuits will continue in perpetuity. This board is unanimous in their bullying and crypto-fascism. I yield back my time.
Thank you, Ms. Trahan. Maria Elena Rodas, followed by Daniel Gonzalez.
BUSD School District Administrator. Berkeley Unified School District administrators and teachers have historically been dedicated to the well-being of their students. And now the well-being of your undocumented and Latino students lay in your hands as their allies and protectors. Many undocumented students have bravely spoken out against the violent rhetoric that is being used throughout this election, condemning their community. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But by speaking out, they also put themselves at risk. We are coming of age at a time when our president-elect, the leader of the quote free world, rose to power on a platform of racist hate. Therefore, it is not just brave for these students to speak out, but dangerous. And to preserve the well-being of these students, as this district has, we must make it our duty to protect them from our own government. Monsignor Romero, the murdered Archbishop of El Salvador, once said, "No one has to obey an immoral law." Having said this, we have compiled a list of demands that you as administrators can use to assist undocumented students. I am confident that this board will declare our school district a sanctuary. However, it is essential that we have rules and ethical codes that ensure the security of our undocumented students. Every semester, we would like a school-wide announcement stating that this is a sanctuary school and a sanctuary city, to remind students that this is a hate-free zone and an ICE-free zone, where students will not be interrogated on their immigration status. Remember that undocumented families live in precarious situations where they need to be consistently assured that they are safe here with us. We would also like the school to begin to adopt curriculum that speaks to the immigrant experience, particularly the Latino immigrant experience, given that we make up approximately 20% of the school district population. It is important that all students learn that the US-Mexico border has always been fluid, and many Latino immigrants, especially those of Central American descent, have fled war and violence and are therefore political refugees.
Thank you. Daniel Gonzalez, followed by Citlali Hernandez.
Hello. Heartbroken and afraid as they're pulled away and stripped of the title of human being. Verbal abuse that penetrates the soul of all the people that are dehumanized for pursuing and wanting to improve the lifestyle that they once came from. If this is truly the land of the free, why must so many people have their freedom be compromised by others with beliefs that they are inferior? It destroys the purpose of liberty we're promised. This country was built from slavery and oppression towards people who were forcefully removed from their homes because of beliefs of inferiority. This is a cycle that must be broken. Living in a world of fear shouldn't be the norm, especially when the community we live in states that it is accepting, diverse, and inclusive. We meet many people from different backgrounds and lifestyles who further increase our understanding of the fact that while we are all human, many of us are more privileged than others. Those with privilege must understand and use it to the advantage to help those in our community overcome the obstacles imposed by the people who only seek to harm and get in the way of a rightful education and future success. Is it your wish to allow for the education of undocumented students to be ripped away from them? To know that their hopes of a better future through the access of education will be shot down? Does it not bother you? I am worried for the people that I know who can be separated from their families. The fear that is instilled into the students who only want to pursue success and make their parents proud, surely enough, leaves you questioning. Berkeley High School needs to remain as a sanctuary for all students because we are human and we deserve a rightful education and sense of well-being. I urge you, approve this policy. Protect undocumented students, for they are just like you and I. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hernandez, followed by Rosa Guzman.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Citlali Hernandez, and I am a senior at Berkeley High School. I'm speaking here today to show my support towards the protection of undocumented students in the Berkeley Unified School District. This is important because deportations on and around school campus disrupts the learning of all students. Undocumented students are essential members in the community and have established significant relationships with their peers. It would be ignorant to believe that the deportations of undocumented students would not affect the whole community. For instance, I remember that when I was in 2nd grade, a good friend of mine was deported. It was a traumatic moment for me and all of my classmates. We were both confused and fearful of the incident because we didn't know what undocumented meant. All we wondered was how could our friend just be taken, be in class one day and not the next. I still remember the teacher facilitating discussions, the students saying that they had nightmares about our friend getting hurt. Even though this happened a long time ago, I still remember the fear I felt. No student should ever feel afraid at their own school. Him and his brothers were actually citizens, but had to leave because their parents were undocumented. If ICE police is permitted to be stationed around campus, who guarantees undocumented parents or guardians will be safe when they go to pick up or drop off their students who are citizens? Now, not only undocumented students would be targeted, but also immigrant families that have undocumented parents. It is truly inevitable to not affect the whole community when members are being forced out. Furthermore, the Berkeley Unified School District is known for being diverse, and undocumented students take part in that diversity. If they were deported, there would be an empty void in the community. There would be one less voice. As a community, we cannot allow white supremacists to attack our undocumented scholars. I'm aware that the media may depict undocumented students as freeloaders who steal resources, but the truth is, they are not given resources. They have to fight for them. As a proud, diverse community, the Berkeley Unified School District needs to protect that unique voice by creating a sanction for undocumented students. Thank you.
Rosa Guzman, followed by Orlando Williams.
Good evening, board members. My name is Rosa Guzman. Those were my students. I'm so proud of them. This is my 6th year teaching at Berkeley High School. I teach in the learning communities AMPS and AC. And 2 years ago, I, along with an incredible team, brought back Chicano Latino literature. Every year during my immigration unit, I tell my students I would not be here if it wasn't for my mother's journey to America, my mother's illegal journey to America. According to Andrea Guerrero, immigration attorney and activist in the United States, 99% of us are part of immigrant families. 1 in 10 of us is a newer immigrant. 1/3 of us are presently living the immigrant experience. I want to be clear, not all of us immigrated to this country voluntarily, but nonetheless, this is a nation of immigrants. Everyone in this room is affected by immigration, directly or indirectly. Because of my mother's sacrifice, I was able to attend public schools, get health care, earn 2 degrees, and overall live a far better life than I would have in my mother's country. It took my mother 10 years to gain her citizenship. In the meantime, she paid taxes, raised 3 strong, beautiful daughters, and lived by the morals and ethics this country proclaims to stand for. My mother passed those morals down to me. I work hard. I give my everything to my students. I try to be the best role model I can possibly be. I motivate them. I yell at them. I remind them of their parents' sacrifice. We cry together. We laugh together. And most importantly, we listen to each other. I have been listening to my students, and they are crying out for help. Do you know how difficult it is to teach scared students? Do you know how difficult it is to comfort students and tell them everything is going to be okay when in fact you're not so sure? I do, and that is why I'm here today. Berkeley High School's mission statement is, quote, "It is our mission to educate and inspire all students in a safe, respectable, and supportive environment." Our students are scared. They are terrified, and that makes it hard for them to learn. We as adults need to absolutely do everything in our power to comfort and protect our students. We need to stand by our mission statement, and passing this policy tonight is a good first step. Thank you.
Ms. Cooper. Well, Mr. Williams, followed by Yvette Falarca.
Good evening. If you are not aware, that's my daughter sitting right there. It took a lot of courage for her to come up here and tell her story. I've met many of you personally and worked for you and with you to better our school district in all aspects. I've been on that campus volunteering average of 10 hours for the past 4 years and beyond. This is not enough time to say what I want to say, but I just want to be clear that I am here as I've always stepped to this podium to support Berkeley Unified School District. When you were principal, I think I met you when I was trying to save the mural on this wall for the Latino students when I attended here at West Campus. Went to school with you, now you're president. I'll just try to make this short because I'm running out of time. I'd like to ask for an apology letter from all of you to my daughter and my family because there's procedures set that were not followed. I know we just can't zap sexual harassment out of Berkeley High. I do have a plan as vice president of PTSA to reach out to all the PTAs in the district, and I hope you guys will support a meeting for us somewhere we can all get together and try to structure something within maybe our home teaching because something is missing. This is beyond control of a board. We need the community. We need parents. We need everybody on board. I'm that guy that can make that happen. I truly believe that. I got people laughing at me saying it's a joke. We've been trying to fight this for years. I've watched this group come up for years and get things installed, put in place, and they weren't used for my child. I fight for you. Can y'all fight for me? That's all I'm asking. I'm not here to argue. I'm not here to point fingers. I just need your support. That's what I'm really asking for your support. You know, I mean, I know y'all hands is full. We see the press. We know what's out there. We don't know what's coming. But in my position as vice president of Berkeley High's PTSA, I have a responsibility to parents, and I have to answer them. But I look for you for these answers, and they're falling a little short right now. You know, there's no reason why this case should have slipped through the cracks the way it did. You know, so again, I'm asking for a letter of apology to my daughter for that failure for those people in the positions that didn't protect her. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Ms. Falarka, followed by Peggy Scott.
My name is Yvette Falarka. I teach at Martin Luther King Middle School, and I'm here representing the Equal Opportunity Now by Any Means Necessary Eon Bam Caucus. First, I want to speak in solidarity with and to thank Anaya for your courage. You're an inspiration and a model for what needs to happen more and more and what will be happening more and more as we stand up against the increased misogyny and racism of Donald Trump and his administration. I also will be speaking again later in support of the resolution to declare our school district a sanctuary district, though I share concerns and think that the resolution language needs to be strengthened in particular ways. And so with that, then I want to say that it's important that we not only gear up and organize to take action against the administration and the growing fascism that Donald Trump is building and leading in this nation, but we have to hold administrators and Democrats, including of the school board, accountable for softening the ground and laying the groundwork for the increased racism and misogyny that we are going to have to stand up against. So we have to tell the truth of what is happening in our school district and speak out and stop it. I'm here in support of Zora Tamer, a veteran teacher at Berkeley High School who teaches English and who has inspired many of my students and my former students who are also here to speak in support of Ms. Tamer. The model of education that was pushed by Obama and Arne Duncan of increased standardized testing, the market model, increased segregation and privatization of our schools, has not only endangered the quality of public education for our students, it's endangered teachers. And I knew I wasn't going to be the only teacher who was going to be under attack in Berkeley Unified. And I want to thank Ms. Tamer for making a fight and standing up for her dignity and speaking out in support of her colleagues and in support of her students. But her students should not be facing interrogations just like mine did, simply because they spoke and wrote letters in support of her, and be cornered or interrogated in offices by administrators. This school board must stop the bullying, the racial targeting, and the discrimination of students, especially Latina students, and teachers, and we will build this movement to stop that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Scott. Ms. Scott, followed by Susie Lopez.
Good evening. We're going to share the time, Heidi and I. My name's Peggy Scott. I'm on the Sexual Harassment Advisory Committee. When I decided to speak tonight, I did not know about this remarkable young woman who was going to be speaking. And I want to thank Ania for sharing her story. It was very brave. I'm here to make a very strong request for a full accounting of all complaints in the district for the last 4 years. There's plenty of anecdotal evidence that many complaints remain open and unresolved. And now, another parade of students whose complaints and retaliation that followed were ignored. How many do we not know about? Don't you want to find out? Because I do. There is an endemic, years-long problem that makes bullying and harassment statistics that you will hear tonight very suspect. If you do a full accounting of complaints, we'll know that you care. And if you don't, we'll see that you don't want to know the answer. And now we don't even have a Title IX coordinator to help. You know Dr. Craig has a conflict of interest doing that job. I sent you chapter and verse. You do not have enough people working with complaints. The office is totally overwhelmed. I think the open, unresolved complaints must be hidden somewhere, and it's time to daylight this whole situation and fix it. And I hope you'll do the right thing.
My name is Heidi Goldstein. I'm a BUSD parent. I'm here to talk to you tonight about the annual bullying report that Dr. Craig will present later. I submit to you that the incidents in this report are vastly undercounted, particularly at the high school level, and that the report seriously misrepresents how deep or effective the action response elements to improve the climate really are. Please, as you listen to this, question deeply and critically what you read in this report, and consider supporting a true climate survey on sexual harassment and sexual harm at Berkeley High. You need to collect real data and understand the issues to address them effectively. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lopez, followed by Lara Curry.
Good evening, board members. My name is Susie Lopez, and I am a Spanish teacher at Berkeley High School. I have come before you tonight to urge the board to approve the proposed policy to protect undocumented students in our district. November 9th, the day that we found out who our next president would be, was a dark day for many of us at Berkeley High School. And while different segments of our population felt angry and afraid, the greatest fear and angst was plastered in the faces of those students who will be the likely target of abusive and violent immigration policies adopted by the Trump presidency. That day and every day since November 9th, students whose shoulders already slumped under the weight of poverty, discrimination, violence, hunger, and homelessness in some cases, now come to class terrified by the very real possibility that members of their family or they themselves could be detained and deported. You can imagine what living in a state of constant fear does to the learning process. I am here to request that an unwavering policy to protect undocumented students in Berkeley be swiftly adopted. Furthermore, please consider issuing a proclamation that denounces and firmly opposes the registry of our Muslim population, should that horrific event ever come to pass in our country. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to all of you tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Curry, and then our last speaker will be Lupe Vargas.
Hi, my name is Laura Curry, and I'm the parent of a 5th grader at Rosa Parks Elementary. And I'm just here tonight to urge the board to pass this policy to protect undocumented students, and that you do that this evening swiftly. Our schools should really be safe havens for our students to study, learn, and play and thrive. I hope that the district will also work with state and local elected officials to explore additional opportunities to protect and support our undocumented students and their families. So again, I urge you to pass the policy tonight to protect undocumented students.
Ms. Vargas.
Hello, I'm Lupe Vargas and I go to Berkeley High. I'm here today on the behalf of Ms. Tammer because 2 of her Latina students were racially profiled by an administrator at Berkeley High. They were also interrogated. This is truly unfair and cruel treatment against students and their families. From past experience of being interrogated, it had a negative impact on me, and I demand that you discontinue these harsh and illegal interrogations of students. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our public comment period. We have a few cards of people who did not get to speak, but there will be another opportunity at the end of the meeting if you would like to speak at the end of the meeting. Additionally, you can always email the board directly at boardofed@berkeley.net. Each board member also has office hours, which are posted online at berkeley.net/schoolboard. Now we have an opportunity to hear from our unions. I see both Ms. Campbell and Ms. Phillips. One of you want to go first? Ms. Campbell?
Good evening, board members. I want to tell you that there was one more Berkeley High teacher hoping to speak tonight, Marcella Taylor. We really appreciate that she's here. I'm going to send you all of the comments that you heard tonight from teachers and students on the policy, and I hope you'll take the time to read Marcella's comments. So I'm Kathy Campbell, and I'm the president of the Berkeley Federation of Teachers. I want to congratulate board members Alper and Daniels on your election as president and vice president of the board, and thank you, board member Leva Cutler, for your fabulous year of service as board president in 2016. I'm here tonight to express BFT's strong support for the proposed policy on protection of undocumented students, and to urge the board to vote on this policy tonight. This policy is a vital first action in the steps our district needs to take to assure students and families of their safety and to reaffirm our values as an institution. Through this policy, we reaffirm ourselves as a sanctuary district and state that we will actively resist any efforts to deny student access to education. We will stand up for students' rights under Plyer v. Doe, and we will stand in solidarity with our undocumented students and families. The policy before you tonight is as strong or stronger than similar policies passed in the LA and San Francisco Unified School Districts. This policy makes clear that our intention is to challenge and resist any request for cooperation and take specific steps to try to eliminate any data in our records that could be used against students or their families. I urge a vote on this policy tonight so that BUSD can begin the process of training staff on this policy and their responsibilities under it immediately, and so that students and families can receive this information quickly. It is critical that this policy is not only adopted, but also widely understood and communicated prior to Inauguration Day. Our next step needs to be putting into place safe passage structures for our students. As I'm sure the board is aware, our undocumented students are only one of a number of groups that may come under attack by our new president. We look forward to working with the district on the resolution that will come forward to the board on January 11th to affirm our district's foundational values and principles. This resolution will need to address threats to our LGBTQ students, our students of color, our Muslim students, our Jewish students, and others, and needs to reject bigotry and hatred in all its forms. As the board is aware, hate crimes against Muslims reached their highest level in recent times in 2015. I believe that's in our country. There has been an uptick of incidents in our region since the election of Donald Trump, who, during his campaign, called for a ban on Muslim immigration and the establishment of a federal registry for followers of Islam. Recent incidents in the Bay Area have shown us that anti-Muslim sentiment is real in our region and must be confronted. If, God forbid, the idea of a again, quote, Muslim registry, were to become a reality in our country, we will need to again craft and pass a policy of resistance, as the board is doing this evening. We appreciate the quick action in bringing this policy to the board for consideration this evening. In these challenging times, it is critical that all parts of our educational system, teachers, classified staff, administrators, families, students, and governing board members are working together to take every opportunity to protect and stand in solidarity with all of our students, families, and staff who are at greater risk under our new federal administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Phillips?
Good evening, school board members. Congratulations on your new positions, Ty and Josh. Good afternoon to our listening public. My name is Paula Phillips. I'm the president of the Berkeley Council of Classified Employees. I want to talk about, first of all, let me start by applauding Ms. Anaya for coming here tonight and sharing her story. It takes a strong young woman to share such a deplorable story for her to have undergone. Which leads me to a topic that I want to discuss about harassment, whether it's sexual or of a non-sexual nature. Harassment, whether it's sexual or non-sexual, should be taken seriously, whether it's student on student, staff on student, students on staff, and staff on staff. It is one that should be investigated fully with sensitivity and respectfully of the victim. And what we have found in the past is that, as you've heard, is that some from the BCCE as well as from the parents, is that some of the complaints are falling through the cracks. And yes, we do request that the board take considerable amount of consideration in reviewing the policies and the complaint procedures, sexual harassments, and other complaints as well. It's time for us as a family, as a school community, to come together to heal this community. We've addressed the student sexual harassment issues prior to. We are trying to address the staff complaints of sexual harassment and harassment as a whole as well. And we hope that you would act swiftly and quickly, but maintaining the sensitivity of everyone involved. I also want to applaud the district for bringing forth the resolution or the policy on a sanctuary district. I was part of the committee, and as part of this school community and being an American, it is deplorable that our president-elect would invoke fear and emotion in the students who our future depends on. And this country being founded by immigrants, it's unconstitutional for him to now take that stance on undocumented workers. So we look forward to working with the district in providing a sanctuary place for our students. Our members as school safety officers are the first line of defense at the high schools, and we look forward to protecting our students against ICE and other bodies that will come in to harm them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Mr. Garcia, are you here for Yuba? Okay.
Good evening. So good evening, members of the board. It is with great pleasure and honor to be here before you as a representative of the administrators here in Berkeley. We speak on behalf of this board policy and protecting undocumented students and families. Tonight, I stand here, as an administrator, but this is an issue that's definitely close to home. So it's an emotional one for me, so bear with me. The essence of this policy is in its first few lines, which state, all students have the right to attend public schools and to enjoy access to equitable education and programmatic services regardless of immigration status of students or of the students' family members. What this means is that we as educators have the responsibility of keeping our students and families safe. In a political climate that has further disenfranchised members of our community by making them live in fear of criminalization and deportation, this policy supports us. It supports us in standing with our undocumented students and families. This policy protects the rights of students and families to access education, to go to school without fear, of fear that perhaps a loved one may not be home when they come home from school. This is a real fear. School should be a place where we value hope,
where we value love and justice. That's where those values should live. Research shows that in order for our students to be ready to learn, we need to ensure their basic needs. Okay, and the most basic need is to feel safe. This policy not only helps students and their families feel safe in schools, but also allows us, as the educators, to be allies. This policy allows for district personnel to refer families to local nonprofit immigration law organizations for support instead of turning them away. It is important for us to be allies. That's the message that we teach in schools. This policy allows for us to practice what we preach. So 2 weeks ago, we had an immigration rights forum at Longfellow. It was a beautiful event. We had board member Beatriz Leiva Cutler, Mayor-elect Jesse Adeguin, immigration law David Silverman, there in an excellent show of solidarity. It was powerful to see our theater filled to capacity. People shared personal connections to the work. But I think that what was most important for me was when we broke into breakout sessions for individual consults, that half of the room stood up and went to help. So that meant that half of the room was filled with allies, volunteers. The other half were the families waiting for help. So that gives me hope. So I know that our work is going to be difficult ahead, but I smile because I feel we have hope. That's our job as educators, as adults in educational institutions, to be the manufacturers of hope, the beacons of light for our community. As I mentioned earlier, schools are the place where the values of hope, love, and justice live. And so that's why I continue to smile. So tonight, I stand here before you, not only as an administrator and as a teacher, but also as a son of undocumented immigrants. This son is indebted to this educational system that has allowed me access to power and privilege. This son is also indebted to those who have led the way and took the risk in bringing our families here. I am now in a position in which I can repay my debt. I do so by being an ally. My story is the same of many of those stories that were shared earlier tonight. A story that deserves to be shared and nurtured so that our students, the students that stood before you, will be able to fill those seats right before you right now that you currently hold. And so that way they can continue to be the beacons of hope, the creators of policy and change. And so to end tonight, I just want to say to the students and the families who currently live in fear, that I stand with you, that we stand with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Is there anyone here from Local 21? Okay, now we will hear from our district committees. Is there anyone here from our district committees? No. Mr. Williams, you're up.
Yes, I'm back. As Vice President of Berkeley High's PTSA, I want to say that we have a problem at Berkeley High. I'm not here again to bash the system. I'd rather see somebody get the job right than being fired, okay? My love for the community and work with Berkeley High, I can use at least 3 minutes on that. You know, I sit on the Parent Advisory Committee, sit on the Development Group Board. Going on. I brought the talent show back to Berkeley High. Back in 2010, 2011, we set the Soul Train record there. I do these things to, not for self-promotion, but to bring students, family, faculty, and staff together. I work with the city of Berkeley and grown 3 festivals in Berkeley. I work with UC Berkeley and help their Students for Hip Hop group continue their event that was at, what's the park up there that has all the issues, People's Park? Nobody campus, the dreaded park nobody wants to do anything in. I was successful in that park. I worked with the Downtown Berkeley Association with an event that was at the plaza to help curb the activity at the plaza. It worked. So I'm willing to put in the work. I really am. because I need to see a change. I have 2 daughters that have 3 more years at Berkeley High. You know, I want to feel comfortable sending them to the school knowing that their safety is first. You know, I know there's a lot that goes with that. You know what I mean? And I like to think that you guys know that I'm on your side. I'm on your team. You know, I'm here talking to you, you know, amongst everybody else that may be watching. But for those who are watching, I need parents. You know, you guys can't do this alone. You can't. You really can't. With the support of the community and parents, I think we can do a better job. It might not be perfect. Berkeley High, you know, when I was attending Berkeley High in the 80s, we were in the top 5 in the state. In the nation, right? Right, Ty? We were about top 5, right? Okay. So I'd like to get back to that status, you know, but when you Google Berkeley High, you see everything but that. So my goal, and I really want you guys' support. You know, this is not me getting at y'all in any other type of way, but your support in pulling the PTAs and the parents together. Because we know Berkeley High PTA falls a little short in some areas, and it has been. And if it wasn't for me 2 years ago, we wouldn't have one. And that's documented. We wouldn't have one. We are now at about 117 years consistently having a PTSA at Berkeley High. I think we run 3rd in the state with that. And I held that to high standards as president at the time to make sure we didn't lose it. So I think it's a simple ask. You know, it's just in support and bringing parents together because we have this division. We have so many things going on in the community and now across the country that affects our students daily. You know, and we hear the things about the immigration. We hear harassment. No offense, but you guys are really not on a campus to see it and really work with it like faculty and staff that I've watched over the years, I think do a great job to try to manage it, you know. And I like to compare it to when I was in the Navy. We have an aircraft carrier up there. Aircraft carriers hold about 3,200 sailors. I was on the USS Carl Vinson. In order to navigate that ship, it takes a lot to run that ship. It's a huge operation. But when we pull in port, it takes the help of tugboats and everybody else to tide to get to where we need to go. Right now, we keep running aground. We got the crew on board. You know, we got the leaders in place. Why are we still running aground? We need to get to the port to let people on and off this vessel so they can continue their lives successfully, and that's our students. Okay, we're transporting them from one stage of their life to the next stage, and we keep getting stuck in the mud and running into these obstacles. And what we're doing is we're losing students. Okay, I work with alumni. That's to build everybody back, to come back to give to this school. And we're about to lose my daughter. Okay, every year she's been there's been a racial incident, and we work through that. Sexual harassment is a bit tough for me with 3 daughters. Okay, so again, I'm up here just asking for your support as Vice President of Berkeley High's PTSA to see things through. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. All right, we'll now hear from board members and the superintendent, and we will keep ourselves to 2 minutes each as well.
Could we use a DLAC representative?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, it was a late drop, but in the spirit of hopefully building student representation on the DLAC committee, this definitely was the immigration policy and building towards school sanctuaries. But in this particular moment, I know that there's one student, Berkeley High student, that didn't quite finish her statement, and we'd like to elect to give that time for her to, if that's allowable.
Sure.
Thank you. I will continue with the list of rights that we have compiled that we think that you guys should consider. It's also important to begin to address a series of mental and physical health issues that have befallen students as a result of this election. We must continue to provide bilingual counseling for students that are hurting and perhaps offer family counseling sessions as well. Furthermore, Know Your Rights cards should be distributed to students and families. We need to release detailed, timely information and guidance on immigration laws through in-person presentations. We should invite such agencies as the East Bay Sanctuary to provide continual immigration workshops for our undocumented parents and students. Finally, and most importantly, an evacuation plan must be set in place in case of an immigration raid. Undocumented students need to be warned if ICE is on or near campus and have a set route they can follow to exit school safely and without fear. If BUSD wants to create a productive and positive learning environment, students need to know that their safety is guaranteed. Students are terrified that their parents may be dragged away in the middle of the night, or they might be taken from their classrooms at school. Their fears are real, and BUSD has a voice, and that voice must speak for those who are voiceless.
Thank you. Now we hear from board members. 2 minutes each. Who wants to go first? Director Hempel?
I'll be quick. I just want to say that ordinarily I have office hours on the last Saturday of the month, but this month that is Christmas Eve. So I doubt very much that anyone would show up, and my family might not forgive me if I showed up. So instead, I'm going to change my office hours to be the first Saturday in January, and if our board secretary could make that note on our website just for the month of January, I will have 2 office hours. I will still come the last Saturday of the month in January, but I will add a Saturday, January 7th, 10:30 at Cafe Lila at University in Delaware. So since I doubt that many people would be showing up on Christmas Eve anyway. I also just wanted to announce also that the NAACP will be having its usual monthly meeting at 1 p.m. this Saturday at Church by the Side of the Road, which is at 2108 Russell Street. And the superintendent, as well as I think some staff, will be there to give an update on the anti-racism task force work, as well as some of the other work that we have been doing to bridge the opportunity gap in education in Berkeley. So I not only urge people to come, but also to consider joining the NAACP in this time of national uncertainty around where we're going with the uptick in racial incidents, in hatred and hate acts in this country. It'll be organizations like the NAACP, the Anti-Defamation League, and groups that support our Muslim brothers and sisters that will be important. I'm also getting a subscription to the New York Times. Lastly, I want to just mention that the Martin Luther King Jr. breakfast this year will be held on Monday, January 16th, and at 8 o'clock. And the tickets are $25. This is our annual celebration where we recognize students for either essays or artwork around the ideals of Martin Luther King, or services that they have done at the high school level. And again, now more than ever, we need to celebrate this. And you can buy tickets at berkeleymlkjuniorday.org. Thank you.
Dr. Pell?
So I want to start by recognizing and appreciating the last year of work of our outgoing president, President Leva Cutler. And I was honored enough to get to work with Beatrice this last several months in running our elections together. And I felt like I got to see a whole new side of her. But in everything that I do with you, I always respect just the amount of how you bring your values into your work. And I feel like you just completely walk the walk, walk the talk, whatever that expression is. You know, and I think Ty mentioned that you're an advocate for students, and I think that shows up in everything you do, your day job, with your family, with the community, but you're also really, I think, the strongest advocate up here for families, and I think you always hold me accountable to make sure that I'm really listening to families, and I just really appreciate that. So I just want to thank you, because you are really one of the most kind people who I know, and you really lead with love, and you're also a really, really strong, fierce woman, but you do in a way that I think people can really hear you and listen to you. So I just, I don't get many opportunities to thank you, so I wanted to thank you for all of your work, and just that I get to be up here with you and work with you. I wanted to also thank the students who came out tonight. I was thinking that tonight was one of the nights where the majority of the speakers were students, and every single one of you was just so incredibly articulate and fierce. And you know, I know that I totally hear all of the comments and the things that you're talking about, both the fears and the struggles. And at the same time, I'm also proud that we've created an institution that is fostering the kind of independent thinking and strength to speak your mind. So I'm really, wanted to thank all of you and the ones who've left for coming, and that I'm really proud to be one of the people involved in this district that is raising kids like you, young adults like you. Finally, my office hours are I think they're supposed to be on the 17th of December, so that's the day after the last day of school. And I'm still planning on having them at Cafe Layla from 1 to 3 in the afternoon. But I am going to say that if you are planning on coming, please email me at judyappel@berkeley.net so I know to come and I can make an appointment with you that day, because I'm just guessing that most people are going to be heading out of town or starting your vacations. I'll probably show up for the first half an hour.
And suggestions that we take all very seriously, because they come from authentic experiences that you've had. And we all look to see how we as individuals and as collectively that we can do something different. Everything that you said is important, and we take all opinions and comments seriously, and look to see how we can move forward our district together, because it is collective work. So I very much appreciate it. Past week to be at the CSBA, School Board Association, and it's on every board member's agenda. And the Latino Board Association is also giving guidance to how to articulate and how to support our students and create safe sanctuaries. So we're looking at this as California. I want to appreciate Ty for your help as a vice president. You made me also look really good in helping me. So congratulations. And I know it'll be, you know, we all have our challenges as school board members, but I know you'll do well. And Josh, you know, got to be the second person in command. So thank you very much. I will have office hours January 12th. It's a really crunch time for me this month in December. So I just, January 12th will be my next on a Thursday at Casa Latina. So thank you very much.
Echo the sentiments expressed by the board around your presidency or chairwomanship. I think each chair president sort of leaves their mark, and you definitely have in terms of our processes and practices and focus, and I hope you feel proud about what you've done, because I know I definitely am to have been on the board with you. I will ask the audience's indulgence. My family's still adjusting to life with 2 kids, and because we have 1 sick kid now, I do have to leave by 9. I apologize, but come January, I'll be back in full swing and able to participate fully in all of the board meetings. And then I will also restart my office hours January as well. And just a quick appreciation for all the students who spoke. First to last, it was very powerful, even in criticizing us, and we appreciate it and glad that you're here to do so.
Director Silva.
I wanted to say thank you to all the students who spoke. I'm so proud to be part of this Berkeley High community that has all these strong advocates for the safety of the students. And I wanted to say I am in support of making Berkeley and BUSD a sanctuary, and I am in support of BHS Stop Harassing and all their demands. And I wanted to say specifically thank you to Anaya for having the courage to say this in front of the board, in front of all the people here. I know that would be difficult for me to do, and I'm sorry you had to experience that, and I will do everything I can as a student board member to make sure that the demands by BHS Stop Harassing will be met as best as my ability.
I too want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. And I also want to say that when we hear things like these things that we heard tonight, we know that we have more work to do, and we will do that. First and foremost, I think that all of our students deserve to be safe, and they need to be in a situation where they are supported. And when we lose one student, we lose all of them. So with that being said, we need to go back, revisit, look at what we're doing, and make some changes so that we don't hear any more of these stories. I want to thank Beatrice again. You heard a lot of things about her, and they are all true. She is the most kind, the most nurturing person you would ever meet. And I'm really thankful for working with you this year. I know we had some challenging times, but you weathered the storm, and you did it with grace and integrity. Congratulations, Judy, for being back on the board, and also to you, Beatrice. Congratulations, Ty. I look forward to working with you and Josh. And I'm sure we're going to have more storms, and we will weather them, and we will do a great job, and we'll make BUSD even better than what it is right now.
Thank you all. Now we will consider the consent calendar. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent.
Is there a second?
Second.
Director Appel, second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. The consent calendar has been approved. Okay. Now we're going to hear item 13.1, which is the board policy for the protection of undocumented students. We've allocated 30 minutes to this item. So I'm going to spend a few minutes of that 30 minutes framing this discussion for the board on behalf of the policy committee that brought this to the board tonight. And I wanted to start by thanking a number of folks for working on this policy in a very short time frame, including my colleague on the policy committee, Vice President Daniels, Dr. Evans, Dr. Susan Craig, immigration attorneys at several local nonprofit legal aid organizations, as well as attorneys at Public Counsel, which has been working with school districts across the state on similar policies. BFT and BCCE presidents, Kathy Campbell and Paula Phillips. I don't know if Paula's still here. Oh, yes, she is. As well as several members of the district staff, teachers, parents, and community members who came to our meeting, our policy committee meeting last week, to discuss the draft policy. And we have also vetted the policy with our own council, with the district's council. We began working on this policy literally days after the presidential election because we realized the urgency of acting now to protect undocumented students in our district against the real threat of federal immigration action. And we were aided immensely by the really prescient work of LA and San Francisco Unified School Districts who have already passed resolutions designed to protect students from immigration authorities coming onto campus or requesting documentation from the district about their immigration status. Our proposed policy tracks the language of those resolutions pretty closely, and we have been advised by immigration advocates and Public Counsel that these policies are essentially the gold standard in terms of providing clear direction to district staff and ensuring the protection of our students. One difference I wanted to point out that we made is that we are proposing a policy, not a resolution, and I want to make a comment about the difference between the two. One thing that we lack currently as a district is clear direction to our staff about A, what information they can collect related to students and their families' immigration status, and B, what to do if immigration authorities ask for access to a school site or for information about a student. So our view is that a policy is the best way to provide clear direction to our employees. Unlike our resolutions, our policies are easy to find, they're easily accessible, and we have a clear process for amending and approving them going forward. So we think that the fact that we're doing this as a policy is actually an improvement over the resolution route. And we've gotten some good feedback about that from some of the attorneys that we've consulted with. That said, it's also important to note what a policy does not do. A policy like the one we're proposing tonight does not affirm our values. It doesn't include language recommitting ourselves to certain principles. It doesn't call for action at the local, state, or federal level. It doesn't speak necessarily to multiple audiences for multiple purposes. It directs employees about what they can and cannot do, and we think this is urgently needed, as Ms. Campbell mentioned in her comments. But there is a place for a resolution, too. And my understanding is that the superintendent will be working on such a resolution with Director Leva Cutler, and hopefully one more board member if there is a volunteer tonight, and district staff and the community and BFT, which has expressed a strong interest in assisting with the resolution, and hopefully our other unions as well. Among other things, the resolution will make clear to every member of the community and beyond the extent to which we hold dear the principles that we've talked about tonight, that every single one of our students deserves respect, dignity, safety, love, and a free public education, and that we view it as our highest and most urgent responsibility to provide those essential goods to every member, every student in the district. This policy that we're about to talk about is a reflection of those values that I think we all share. But I wanted to acknowledge that it is not the purpose of the policy to articulate those values except as necessary to provide clear direction to our employees. My hope and expectation is that we can review and approve a resolution at our January 11th meeting before the next president is inaugurated. Two more things, and then I'll stop talking. I want to mention what the policy does and then say why we're asking for approval tonight. So one very important thing the policy does is ensure that the district will not have any information about the immigration status of our students. The law from the Supreme Court is quite clear. Whether students are undocumented or not, they are entitled to exactly the same programs and services as documented students. In certain circumstances, students may tell us or their teachers or their counselors information about their status. But if we pass this policy, we will never ask a student for information about their immigration status. The other important thing this policy does is ensure that we will never provide information to federal immigration authorities about a student willingly or willingly allow access to a school site by immigration authorities unless required to by law. No federal or state law requires school districts to assist in the enforcement of immigration laws. And this policy ensures that we will not do so willingly under any circumstances. If my colleagues on the board don't believe that that language is clear enough, I do have a suggestion for a couple sentences to add to the policy that I'll share when we get to the discussion. Finally, our normal process for approving policies requires 2 meetings. However, under our policy on policies, thanks to Vice President Daniels, if a supermajority of us agrees, we can approve a policy on the first reading. That's 4 out of 5 of us. If all 5 of us are here, it's 2/3 of the board.
Still should be 4. Doesn't matter. 4.
It's 4 board members. If 4 of us agree, we can approve it tonight. Like I said, my hope is that we can approve a resolution at our January 11th meeting, but I think it's critical that we pass this policy tonight so that district staff has plenty of time between now and January 20th to study it, be trained on it, train on it, and make a plan for implementation so that it can be distributed with appropriate translation to the community. So that's why we're asking the board to approve this policy tonight. So now with that long introduction and framing, I'll open it up to thoughts and questions. Maybe we can start, Vice President Daniels, since I know you have to leave in 5 minutes. Is there anything you want to add?
No, we were on the policy committee. I think we wanted to, just to echo what you said, President Alper, we wanted to get something as soon as possible. We're not limited to saying that this can never be changed or improved. So I think and during the policy committee, we had talked about the possibility of having additional input and feedback to strengthen an improvement. And we don't need to be, if there's a policy out there that is great, bring it to us and we'll look at it, and if it fits, we'll continue to adjust.
So, President Alpert?
Yes.
First of all, I want to thank the policy committee and everybody who's been involved in framing and creating the policy, and the time frame that we've worked with. In talking to other school board directors and listening to also to discussions that we've had about in other circles, one of the things that I think would help also is in terms of direction to the superintendent and to our staff is having agreed upon number of days of when this policy is going to be both trained, our staff are going to be trained, and information will be posted on all the doors, things that will be actionable and by when they will be done. We have an urgency around this because of what this president, we don't know what will do. And I appreciate the fact that we're very open as a board to revisit the policy in case there's something that we didn't address and that this policy did not address that we didn't anticipate. So I really appreciate that we keep ourselves open for that and that our community also know that. But also framing it to our community, why did we do a policy versus a resolution? I think this is not just sending out a policy, this is the district's policy, this is what we're trying to do, but also why and what's coming, for what will also be coming forward. But I think giving a certain amount of days to the superintendent in terms by when both our safety officers, our principals, our teachers, will know about this policy and what the intent is very important because in this sense, in this climate that we're in, every day counts. And so I would hope that we can also include that in terms of instructions to the superintendent. I definitely believe perhaps it goes into the resolution, perhaps it goes into, there was many comments made by students and by our community members in terms of how do we also include a curriculum on the immigration experience? How do we also include our Muslim community to also feel that this is not just one ethnicity's experience, but the experience of many. So there's other things I think the resolution would probably cover, but I understand, we all understand the urgency of this policy and how important it is to have it. And there's also, again, I think the resolution would cover a whole breadth of who are our partners, but I think the training that our staff receives is really important. At the Longfellow meeting, there was several just really key information that was given to us in terms of don't open the door. To an ICE official, because then you're permitting them inside. So, simple information that our staff can receive and should receive is very critical and important. You do not have to open the door to an ICE official. So I think for the training is very important that we have a discussion with our principals, our teachers, we have open campuses, to our safety officers, everybody have immediate training on what this means in terms of an ICE official coming to your door. What about information giving? I think that it's really very important. There's plenty of partners at the East Bay Sanctuary. There's, that can easily come. They're very open, and other agencies are really open to coming and providing that training. And I think all of our staff are eager to also receive it. So, and part of, I think, I don't know if it's in the training, I think that safe passage, I don't anticipate that to happen, but it is important for our families also to know if something should happen to one of our students that we also have a plan for how to address that family and how to support our families.
I feel like a lot, I think a lot has been said, and I support the policy. I'm curious to know what language you were considering amending to it.
Sorry.
I'm interested to hear, you mentioned there's some language that you might, I couldn't tell if you're proposing or if it was I'm just curious to know what the new language is that you have sitting in your computer.
So I was going to propose, if you all have it up here, that we clarify that when there's a request for access to a school site or a request for documents that is forwarded to the superintendent and then to our legal counsel, that I think we could make it clearer that our direction is to challenge any such request. And so I wanted to raise the possibility of adding 2 sentences in the above the second to last paragraph. So the second to last paragraph is the one that says superintendent or designee shall ensure that copies of this policy. Above that, I was going to propose adding the superintendent shall challenge any request by federal immigration authorities for information or for access to any school site to the fullest extent of the law. In no instance shall information or access be provided to any federal immigration authority without a valid and lawful court order. I think that is maybe implicit in the language that's already there, but it's a little bit more explicit. So, so that's the answer to that question.
I guess in response to, go ahead, Petra. Well, I guess the only thing is, I mean, I don't know if this would show up in a policy or if it would show up elsewhere. I want to make sure that we're not putting our superintendents in a position where they are then, I mean, how do we make it clear that they're, maybe just because it's a policy, but that they are acting on behalf of the district so that they're not personally in jeopardy? You know what I mean? I feel like it's, or that we're protecting them in some way, or I want to make it clear that the superintendent's acting as an agent of the district and this is the policy of the district, so that they're kind of indemnified from any personal, criminal, or other kind of liability.
Well, I think if we're directing the superintendent to challenge it, to use legal means to challenge an order. Go ahead, Dr. Hampa.
You know, I actually think that it's implicit in review and consultation with legal counsel what you're saying, but I do think then it could be forwarded to this board for discussion at closed session, because I think then we can direct the superintendent to act as we want him to, as opposed to putting him kind of in a policy to be making independent decisions. I think that it should be the board that directs staff if it goes further. You know, if it gets to the point that we are being directed. Well, if it gets to the point that the federal government is requesting information that our policy says that we will not give, then I think that it's a matter for us to discuss with our attorneys, and then for the board to give direction to the superintendent on what the next steps were, as opposed to putting him in a policy without that process, because I think that process makes it clear that it's the board that will be directing staff if such a request is made.
I also think that in advance you can get that information from legal counsel so that you are prepared.
That's what I was going to say.
In advance. I think it's really important that we know all the what ifs.
What we're up against.
All the what ifs.
Prior to something like this happening.
Both our superintendent, in the absence of the superintendent, the assistant superintendent would also know how to respond. So, you know, we all want to make sure that it not just fall on the shoulders of one person, but what if you were, you know, it happened and you were off-site. So I think it's incumbent on us to ensure that all our bases are covered on this.
So what is your proposal then? So Karen, is your proposal language that would, in addition to what Ty is saying, amend this to, if this should happen, it would be referred to the board in closed session as, you know, I guess that could happen it would be potential litigation or something.
Yeah, I have, so tell me, Karen, if this sounds good to you, that right now it says forwarded to the superintendent for review and consultation with legal counsel. We could say forward to the superintendent for review and consultation with legal counsel and the board in closed session if necessary. I'm not sure, I don't know if we should.
We'd have to say in closed, if necessary.
If necessary, because I'm not, we don't want to, it might not,
necessary,
if it's access to a site, it might not be relevant. So would that Does that get to it?
I think it just should, I think is that the responsibility for refusing such requests should be on the board and not on the superintendent.
And so even if maybe in emergency situations where the board, where there's no time to come to the full board, we could at least address it in the closed session after the fact to support the superintendent. I know that's not the main point, but I just want to make sure that,
this particular paragraph is talking about requests for documents.
Right, but I think that Ty was just saying if
so
there's
with requests for documents, I can't imagine a situation that there's not a time to hold an emergency closed session if need be. I mean, this is not referring to, I mean, it's already clear that we won't let them on the campus, and that to me is a direct board direction to staff.
Yeah, I think I agree
but
with
requests
that,
for documents to me, until we know what the request is, what the timeframes are, what the ramifications might be, I don't think that's one. I don't think it's the superintendent's call to make that decision, and two, I don't think we should put him in the position of making that decision.
Okay, so the language that I suggested, we're adding only to the paragraph about documents. Yes. Okay.
Well, you were suggesting actually adding it to the next paragraph, right?
Well,
that didn't really.
No, I'm sorry, just so we're clear. The paragraph that we are adding the language about and the governing board is the paragraph that starts all requests for documents. Is that
and what about your language?
And then, well, what about my language?
Where you wanted to add that to the next paragraph, right?
To make it its own new paragraph.
Its own paragraph,
yeah.
Okay.
How do people feel
Will
about
you read it one more time for those of us who...
When we discuss a policy, it'd be great if we could have it connected, but oh well.
What about
you can always ask.
What about the number of days that the superintendent also ensures that there's training of our staff?
Let me come back to that. So let me read this, and then we'll come back to that. The superintendent shall challenge any request by federal immigration authorities for information or for access to any school site to the fullest extent of the law. In no instance shall information or access be provided to any federal immigration authority without a valid and lawful court order.
I'm just a little confused with it. So you talked about, that also talks about documents. So how does that?
Well,
it says, or information.
Well, maybe.
I just want to make sure it's not internally.
So also, doesn't that say in paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, there's a standalone paragraph that says, absent any applicable federal, state, local law, regulation, or local ordinance or court decision.
Well, I guess the point here is to memorialize that our direction to challenge as best as we can any court order. So if we get a subpoena, that's a court order, but we rather. We the
are you saying we the board?
Well, we the district.
We the district.
That if there's a lawful way to challenge it, if we can go to court and say no, we don't agree with the subpoena, we don't want to comply with it.
I guess I think that it's a significant addition, and I would suggest, unless it's gone through the vetting that the rest of this went through, I would suggest that we pass this as it is with this amendment, and then I think we need to address still Beatrice's question about if we want to put a timeline in here or if that goes somewhere else. But and then maybe the policy committee can discuss it.
Okay.
And if you want to, it sounds like there might be other amendments too.
Yeah, and it is true that the districts across the state are passing policies and resolutions, so we may very well want to refine it.
And I think the intent of the board is pretty clear with this policy. I mean, you don't write a policy like this and then say, come on in and get what you want without a challenge. So, you know, I think it's just a lot of work obviously has gone in with this, with our community here in Berkeley, as well as communities up and down California and across the nation. So I do think, the only thing for me is making it clear that this would have to go to the board so that we're making the decision around documents and other things. I mean, we don't know what shape the federal actions might take. And it seems that there may be, as it unfurls, then I think it'll be clearer, what next steps we need to do. But I do agree that having some deadlines for staff I think would be helpful in terms of the community understanding that, you know, that this is going to happen like now. It's not going to happen like 6 months from now.
What were you going to say? Were you going to say
Well, I was
something
going to
about
say, I
that?
don't know if the deadline should be in the policy.
No, but couldn't they go in along with the motion to pass the policy?
Yes.
So what should the deadlines be?
By inauguration day.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
By inauguration day.
By inauguration day, staff will be trained?
I know that puts an urgency on it, but it's really important. We don't know what plans are in place day one of those 100 days. So I would rather err on that side of caution for all of us. And, you know, unfortunately, it's an alert. It's an education that none of us ever anticipated to have, but we all need to have. And it starts, you know, in our district. And I think putting the time frame is very important. Our staff need to know, our parents and our community need to know. Just, you know, it's as important as sexual harassment. It's important as other policies. But let's get it done, and by when.
So what are we saying?
I actually think it'd be a nice idea to have it done for Martin Luther King's birthday this year or next year. I think it's totally in line with a position that Martin Luther King would have taken. And that's only a week difference between, that would be before the inauguration. And I think that there's a certain symmetry in having that be part of our recognition and our commemoration of Martin Luther King.
But can we just be clear about what we're saying should be done by that time? Are we talking about, so go ahead.
We're talking about a training in terms of how to respond to exactly what was done with the parents at Longfellow. It's very simple, it's very clear. Also the posting, making sure that by that day that we have this posted on all school sites that are in our staff rooms and our principal's office and the doors. It's also important.
So I'm curious to know, just to throw this over to staff for a moment, whether, I mean, we have one more week of school, and then there's 2 weeks before Martin Luther King birthday. And so I think there's different things. One thing might be the posting, and the other thing, because I think that actually the training would be different than the training that the parents received, because the parents are receiving what happens when you, as an individual, I wasn't at the, maybe it's the same, but from what you were saying, it sounds like it would be different, because this is also as a district staff person, as our personnel, how do we want them, how do they need to respond? And I think we need to make sure whatever we present to the teachers is vetted by legal counsel. And, you know, this is, we're also, especially because we're talking about potentially being prepared to defend this in court, I think we need to make sure that we've set up all the steps so that we're really truly protecting our students. And so I'm not saying we put it out very long, but I think it's a setup to say we're going to be able to train everybody really.
I think there's a hierarchy of training. I mean, for example, I think, you know, the first is our records department, right? Our student records department. I mean, that's kind of the first line, right? Because it would be whatever would be in our official records that would be, I would think, the request. Well, I do think it's important for staff. And then, to me, secondly, is those staff that are kind of associated with letting, you know, with visitors being on campus, whether, you know, just as we have policies around police being on campus, that would be the second line. So I don't, you know, to have everyone trained, you know, down to, you know, a part-time
safety officers
IA is not going to happen in the next 3 weeks. But I think, and please chime in, it's frontline, you know, it's those people who are dealing with our student records and those people who are responsible for visitors on campus. Those are the first two. And then I think, you know, there might be a little bit of
I think we're getting into the details, and I think the superintendent and staff can get together in terms of
well, that's why I think
the urgency of it, that it happened, and as me as a board member, I would like to know when it's going to happen, and it's not going to happen within, you know, 90 days, 100 days, but it's going to happen, and by when we can expect it, sooner than later. That would be my urgency and point.
And I do agree, but I also think that that's more in the weeds about, in terms of, you know, having this set date within the next 3 weeks, because that just can't happen.
Why don't we?
Well,
Well, I was going to suggest that we ask that the policy be widely disseminated by inauguration day. That seems easy enough to do. And that staff come back on the 11th with a plan to update us on a plan for training.
We can do that.
Well, what's happened already.
What's happened already, plus the next steps.
And then, yeah, after that.
So I think the dissemination, and maybe we can also say that it can be brought up at the principals' meetings, because that way we can make sure that the principals are also ensuring the dissemination.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, of course.
So assuming that I were to come to one of our campuses, what would be our procedure? Would we be focused on making sure, first of all, that they didn't come, and then how would we make that public to all the students at our school and the parents and the staff? Would that be like quickly put out to them? And specifically, if they were asking about a specific student, would we make sure to inform their family, or is it more about just keeping them out? Like, how are we going to deal with that transparency of our actions and making sure that that is widely publicized or not?
Well, I think those are great questions. One thing that several of the speakers mentioned was, coming up with, as a district, a rapid response program or a safe passage program, which I think get into the sort of details of what would actually happen, what we will be training our staff to do in the event of certain activities. I don't know if we have the answers sitting up here tonight, but I think that these are the things that we're going to have to work on as a community going forward. Because there's really, as I said earlier, the policy is one part of it. The resolution, I think, is very important. And then there's also all the programmatic implementation, but also the programs and services and resources that we want to be able to provide to students and their families. We've already provided some of them, as Mr. Garcia mentioned earlier, the event at Longfellow. But I think the questions you raise are really important questions, because we don't know what's going to happen. There is a precedent for immigration authorities, particularly waiting outside the schools. So we have some experience. There's people in the community with a lot of experience and a lot of ideas about what we should be doing. So I think we need to listen to them. And that'll be a part of our response, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point, and I also think I've already heard from parents, and I'm sure you guys have too, about what do we do if a student's at risk or the family's at risk. And so it might be a great opportunity for us to hold a forum about, to brainstorm, to kind of help be part of organizing a community response. Yeah, or I guess maybe, I'm sure there actually already are those meetings, and we can figure out how we can engage in them.
Yeah, because certainly, as it was mentioned before, that this is not going to be just the purview of the school district and school board, but our city and our city council, as well as our faith community, nonprofits, and the community as a whole. We don't know what would happen if ICE doesn't come to campus but comes to a student's home, and then the student's a citizen, but the parents have now been picked up. I mean, that type of situation would have to be one that we as a community face together. And I am sure that already there are discussions about, those kinds of situations and what we do as a community. So I certainly think when we bring a resolution, we can certainly reaffirm our commitment to working with the city, our faith community, nonprofits, and community as a whole, that we face this possible threat to members of our community as a community.
All right, can I have a motion? Go ahead.
Really quick. I do think transparency about this is a really important thing. I think if a student, if there is ICE that comes to one of the schools in BUSD, I feel like although we could definitely try to prevent them from coming in, uncertainty about what the situation was could create maybe more fear in the students if we don't have a protocol on how to get that information out quickly and effectively. I think that's really, really important. And I know if I was hearing rumors from other students and things, I would feel really afraid. And I think it's important we figure out how we would do that.
I think we could add it. We have our emergency protocol that we just adopted as a policy, and I think adding that to that would be a first step. So that because I agree with you. I know that this was a few years ago when there were rumors of ICE coming on Berkeley High campus. That in fact was not exactly true, but it certainly caused a lot of fear, and there was some truth. I mean, ICE was in the area. They just weren't going onto campuses, but that rumor, quickly spread throughout Berkeley High. And in fact, I will say the Berkeley High community responded by forming a human, you call it barrier, around the entire Berkeley High campus, saying, we won't let you in. But I think the message that, getting out a message saying either a rumor, this is just a rumor, or yes, ICE has been, ICE is in our community, this is, and, we are on kind of responding, according to our policy, I think is a good idea. I know that with that emergency notification that I think staff was working on an automated push out that could be texted to students and staff, emailed, so, because, most students either have a phone that can get text, or their friend next to them has that phone. And so I think, that is one way of quickly getting out.
A BHS meme.
Yeah. What?
A BHS meme.
I don't even know what a meme is.
All right, so would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make the motion to accept the policy, and there's amendment, correct?
Yeah, so the amendment, I believe.
I didn't write it down.
Is that in the third to last paragraph, after the words legal counsel, it will say, and the governing board in closed session if necessary.
So I make that amendment in terms of, and to the governing board in closed session. So,
oh, go ahead, we need a second, and then I have.
Well, isn't part of the motion what we just talked about in terms
Yeah,
of?
but I just realized that I wanted to ask another question about that.
Oh.
So what's the process? We have a motion, do we get a second, and then we can have
a motion
discussion?
We can have discussion after the second, but first, can you finish the motion in terms of the direction to staff to, I believe it was to?
Yeah, the motion to staff is to come back at the January 11th board meeting with what has happened to date in terms of the information being dispersed, and a plan for training and education for our Berkeley school district community.
And to, before January 11th, disseminate the policy widely to the community.
And it's dissemination of the policy widely to all of our schools and school sites.
Did you get that, Liz? Okay. Is there a second for that?
I'll second it.
Okay. Now there's more discussion.
So I realized when as we were just talking and I was rereading the policy, so the part of the policy, that the paragraph above the one that we just is amended in this motion on the table, also does talk about if ICE comes to the campus. And I'm just wondering if there's any role there for the governing body that we would want to consider.
Well, isn't that so?
Because we just talked about the documents, but it's not in the.
Well, so we had, when Karen brought up that other language, I mean, we could put it in that section too, but I think that your point, Karen, was that it might be more immediate. There might not be time to.
I think I said that, but I'm just concerned that I don't know if there's a way after the fact. I just want to be able to affirm. Maybe that would just happen. Maybe to make sure that the board is, the governing body is advised of this at the next meeting, or some way that we can, I don't know, I don't actually know what the mechanisms would be. I just wanted to say that, I'm again thinking how Petra is, okay, so this happens, I mean, honestly, the unlikely scenario that ICE just shows up at one of our schools and wants to come in, and of course they're going to call the superintendent's going to say no. Is there anything that we would want to put in place for after that so that you could then get the backing of the school board?
Well, we could have similar language that says consultation with legal counsel and the governing board as soon as possible.
As soon as possible, or something like that. As soon, yeah. Because we don't want it to be a block. We don't want it, we don't want it to become a barrier. Let's say we have a different superintendent and a different board. So maybe, I don't know, maybe we leave it as is. Maybe I'm nitpicking. I'm just, again, trying to.
I mean, I think that it would probably happen without it being in the policy, but if we could add it, maybe a separate sentence that just says the superintendent shall consult with the governing board as soon as practicable.
What do you think? Do you think it's necessary?
No, I don't think it's necessary.
You don't think it's necessary?
I don't
Okay.
think it's.
All right. Then we have a motion on the table in a second.
Okay, is any other discussion? Can we have a roll call vote?
Director Leva Cutler?
Yes.
Director Karen Hemphill?
Absolutely.
Mike?
She said absolutely.
Absolutely.
Student Director Petra Silvi?
Yes.
Director Judy Appel?
Aye.
President Ty Alper?
Yes. The the policy, spaced out for a second. The policy is approved.
The motion is approved.
The motion is approved.
So let me make sure I have this correct. So what we will bring back is a timeline for when training can happen, a motion for staff to come back January 11th, what we've done so far and what we plan on doing, and the dissemination of the policy.
I would just include the partners that you have and organizations that are at hand, that you've made contact with, that are prepared to give counsel or advice to the district, so that you already know who are these people, that in the event we have a question, we know who exactly to go to. They already know our situation.
Oh,
So partners and organizations.
And also working with consultation, not consultation, but
Counsel,
working
legal
with the city, because they also have a similar policy. I think that we all need to be on the same page as we're looking at
And
this
perhaps
policy.
the president and I, or maybe can speak with the new mayor-elect regarding our policy, because I know that they're making one for Sanctuary City, so that we also agree. And what is the city doing? What are we doing too? And we can have that conversation.
Do you want another board member to work with you on the resolution? Would you like to do that too, Director Pell? Okay, thank you. So Director Pell and Director Leva Cutler will work with the superintendent on the resolution. Liz, I'm going to email you the policy as we just approved it. If you could put it on the website. Is it possible to put it up tonight?
Yeah, I'm sorry, President.
Yeah, go ahead.
Am I allowed to help work on the resolution too?
Absolutely.
You sure can.
Great. So Director Sylvie, will you just pronounce your last name? Is it Sylvie, just like it's spelled? Okay, sorry. Director Sylvie will work with Director Appel and Director Leva Cutler. Thank you. Okay. Now we are first interim.
So this is actually an action item. It's just for the board to receive the report. It's also an item that you have to vote on it. And so we have Pauline, our Director of Fiscal Services, is going to provide the report. And hopefully there might be some questions afterwards that we can answer. But again, this is an action item.
And we've allocated 30 minutes.
I think we can do it in 30 minutes. So good afternoon, everyone. I'll be presenting, is this on? I'll be presenting the first interim budget, and that's for the period ended October 31st. So first, we're going to look at the budget highlights. So we had a positive certification, which means that the district will be able to meet the obligation, the state required reserve for the current year and the subsequent 2 years. Measure E1 passed by the voters by 88.86%, and this will replace Measure A effective 2017-18. The impact of Measure E will be discussed in our multi-year projections. Prop 55 was also approved by state voters, and that will extend high income tax rates for an additional 12 years or through 2030. Another highlight, our undesignated fund balance of $5.3 million after designating $0.7 million for an ending fund balance of $6 million. And the change in the fund balance since adoption is an increase of $357,000. Then we look at the changes since adoption, or our variance report. And we had slight changes in our revenue. And it's in our books. It's on pages 18 through 21. So if you want to follow along in our books, we can. So we had a slight reduction in gap funding, and that was from the adopted budget, from the May revised to when the governor actually enacted the state budget. There was a 0.66 reduction in gap funding, and that resulted in a $32,000 reduction in base funding. And we also had a loss of 303 students in our unduplicated student count. And that actually drives our supplemental revenue. So as a result, we had a reduction of $87,000 in our supplemental revenue. So overall, our revenues, LCFF base and supplemental, we had a decrease of $119,631, and that's in your variance report. We also had net savings of $403,000, and that will be explained on the following slide. The contribution to special education for transportation, we changed the contribution from the ongoing special ed program to the transportation program, which makes it appear as if we have an increase in our contribution to special ed, but that's because the transportation program is now unrestricted. So essentially, there was no change in our contribution to special ed. So this is a laundry list of the changes since adoption. And you can see we had an increase in certificated salaries for LCAP. And that's because we transferred amounts from unallocated budgeted expenditures. So the salaries went up by $399, but then you can see that the transfer of unallocated budgeted expenses had an equal and opposite offset. We had salary and statutory benefit savings due to vacant classified positions, as well as adjustments based on the class and comp and other adjustments to actual costs. That gave us a savings of $422,000. We looked at our health costs, and we looked at vacancies and adjustments to health benefits, estimates to actuals. And what we determined was that a lot of our employees are opting for the single plan, whereas we budgeted vacancies at the family plan. So that resulted in a savings of $515,000. We also increased our budgeted expenses for AP testing offset, and the reimbursement was already included in our revenues, and that's $186,000. Other increases for Green Dot training, AEDs, and other costs, that was $19,000. And then we had an increase in capital outlay for one-time purchase of buses, 3 new buses, and that was a board-approved purchase. Other budget adjustments of $50,000 resulted in the net change of $403,000 that we mentioned earlier. There was also a change in our restricted state funding, which is not a part of our unrestricted general fund, but we wanted to mention this because it's a new source of funding. It results in $150,982 in our restricted state funding, and that's for college readiness. So. Okay, now we're going to look at the deficit and surplus. Overall, the district's deficit and surplus for the current year and the subsequent 2 years. So we always start with a change to fund balance. So at first interim, you can see that we're deficit spending by $3.7 million. In 17-18, we have a surplus of $316,000, and then we're deficit spending again, or we're projected to deficit spend by $1.1 million in 18-19. After we look at the fund balances, we then remove the impact of one-time revenues and expenses. So our one-time revenues in the unrestricted general fund, that's our mandated cost reimbursement. So we take that out of the equation. That's going to leave us deficit spending by $5.9 million in 16-17. But then we also had one-time expenditures. And this is a laundry list of one-time expenditures, which are board approved for the most part. We had an election cost from adoption and the impact of the 3% bonus as well. So that was $7.2 million. So if you add that back, you can see that we have a surplus of $1.4 million in 16-17, a surplus of $316,000 in 17-18, but then we have a deficit of in 18-19 of $1.1 million. And the significant, what's causing the change from year over year is our increase in STIRS and PERS, which we look at further on in the presentation. Multi-year projections. So with the multi-year projections, we're looking at the current year and the subsequent 2 years. We look at our COLA. This year we had no COLA. 17-18 and 18-19, you can see the projected expenses. Gap funding, 54.18, 19.3, and 34.25. And remember, this is the gap funding of the declining balance. So it's not going to result in a lot of revenue necessarily. So you can see the impact of that when we look at our base funding versus our supplemental funding. So our base funding increases in 17-18 and 18-19. We also have an increase in our supplemental, but it's a lot less, and it's actually flat in, from 17-18 to 18-19. Other state funding, the reduction in the one-time funding is taken out from there. So we went from 3.9 down to 1.7, which remained flat. Local funding is flat. Total revenue, year over year, it's 89.5 million, 89.4 million, and 90.5 million. Expenses, we started off with 91.6, but remember we're taking out the one-time expenses that we talked about. And we also have increases in STIRS and PERS, so that's the net impact. In 18-19, we did the same thing. So we also looked at our sources and uses. We had a slight change from year over year. And then the number that we look at for the change in fund balance was what we talked about when we were doing our deficit or our surplus. So that kind of explains the change in fund balance. Deficit spending 3.6, positive 0.3 in 17-18. And we're deficit spending by 1.2 in 18-19. When we add the beginning fund balance, we have a fund balance, ending fund balance in 16-17 of 6 million, 17-18 6.3, and 18-19 5.1. We then designate for revolving cash, and the commitment for BSEP program, the board had approved $2 million for 15-16, in 15-16 for 16-17. We actually ended up spending $0.2 million less than the $2 million that was board approved. So we have to leave the 0.2 as a commitment until the board has voted to return the commitment. Our share of the 3% reserve is pretty constant. And we're our ending undesignated fund balance, 5.4 million in 16-17, 5.9 in 17-18, and 4.7 in 18-19. So other changes in the year that in 17-18 is the first year of measure E1. So there was a decrease in the class size transfer from BSEP. Due to the one-time bonus excluded from the teacher average in 17-18. And then there are other one-time contributions to adult education that we removed, as well as one-time revenue and expenses, which we kind of touched on earlier. So we ended with a surplus of 0.3, and we estimate the increase in STIRS and PERS to be $1.2 million, and that accounts for the reduction that we talked about earlier. So in 18-19, we do include salaries and benefits for BITSA. We're deficit spending by $1.2 million, and we also have an increase in STIRS and PERS of $1.1 million. Other considerations, we did not include future negotiated salary increases in 17-18, And what we have not included also is a possible Berkeley High School redesign. So I'll take questions.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
I had one question. This is not in terms of the budget, but in terms of the governors. And has there been any further discussion on the cap on reserves?
There has not.
No. Nothing else has been said about that.
We're waiting for the January budget and to find out the impact of Proposition 55 and any updates on the reserve. So we'll find that out in January.
And the other question that impacts both our food program is how much did our numbers change in free and reduce in this October with the registration of families into the food program for free and reduce? Did it change a lot?
Well, in the unduplicated student count we mentioned, there was a decrease.
Yeah, but that also includes English language learners. So I would have to look at the direct impact to food services.
To food services, and what that would be. Okay. And I know that childcare, there's an added, the daily rate is going to change come January, and then it's going to change again by 10% in July. And then it's supposedly, there's going to be another change, I think. So at some point, maybe we can have a discussion in terms of how that's going to help the district in terms of our child development program and our ongoing contribution or not to child development.
Okay,
thank
you. Director Powell?
Just a quick request from staff. So that 303 students, is it possible to get a breakdown of who, like, how, what their targeted group is?
Correct.
We can do it by grade level and by school.
Correct.
Yes.
Is that easy to do? Am I asking?
It's not too difficult.
No,
okay, thanks.
I'm speaking for Jay, but I don't think it's difficult.
I just had a quick question about the STRS and PERS. Will you remind me, is that something that will change when the governor changes, or did this governor set in motion a requirement that will go for a certain number of years? I mean, how are we predicting out what the STRS and PERS costs will be?
I think we got projected percentages for 5 or 6 years out.
Correct.
And my understanding that is not going to change. That's what we've been told, those rates. That's what I've been told.
Is it set every year, though? How does...
No, we got they do give us some updates each year.
Correct.
So we get a projected amount, we get projected percentages, and then we do get a year-by-year actual percentages, but they've been fairly close.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Any other questions?
No, I just wanted to make a comment. I want to thank our staff who are working late into the night to get this and prepare this for us. And Geraldine, who goes out on Sunday night to deliver, morning to deliver this to us too, so that we can have enough time to review it. Thank you very much, staff.
We did send it electronically, and so I'm asking the board if they want to receive it electronically on the weekends, or if they still want to receive the hard copy that we deliver by car. So we're hoping to make a little bit of a change and then bring the hard copy book to the board meeting.
I think electronic is fine.
Okay, great.
I mean,
that
for
would
me,
be
to
wonderful.
other board members, I think we're fine electronic.
Everybody's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like a hard copy, but I can come pick it up.
Right. We will still generate the hard copy. It's just on that peak, that weekend. We can send it electronically, and then we could provide the hard copies.
I would just say if there is a way also, but whether it's an Adobe that you can highlight and you can write notes, that helps me, because when it's on the PDF and you can't write on it, it really helps that we can have access to highlight, make our notes on the pages.
Okay, we will work on that.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Fonsley.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next we have item 14.1, which is the developer fees justification study.
So we're bringing this item to the board. It's something that we've discussed over the last year. Tim's actually going to provide the framework for this item, but as he's providing the information for you, this is a discussion, but we do want to know what are your concerns or any other questions that you might have before we bring this back in January. So.
Director White, we have, wait till he's listening. Director White?
Yes, sir.
We have allocated 30 minutes to this.
Thank you. And we'll, yes, sir. Thank you, Director Alper, new President of the Board, for hearing this item. It's an item that we feel very strongly about, and we'll run through it briefly. We think it's an item that's worthy of the Board's attention and something that all citizens and students of Berkeley can benefit from. So to get off to a start, we're presenting to you the results of our fee justification study for Level 1 developer fees. Level 1 developer fees are fees that school districts assess as a part of a model for funding its facilities, a three-part model. Three-part model being state funding, local funding, and developer fees. The study was done by a school facilities consultant, and I do have them here in attendance with me. If I can introduce them. Jared and Kevin from School Facilities Consultants are here to assist us in any kind of follow-up questions that you may have. Our agenda for today briefly is the history of developer fees and the purpose of these fees, new development impacts, and additional needs. Developer fees were established in 1986 along with the state school facility program to be used in combination with local funding, as we said. In addition to local funding, state funding assists in that model. Developer fees are adjusted in even years every 2 years. Currently, Level 1 fees are $3.48 for residential and 56 cents per square foot for commercial development. And the purpose of developer fees is for us to be able to mitigate those impacts associated with new developments being put online inside of a school district as housing fluctuations cause increases in our capacity. And those students that are a part of our district that come to us as part of these developments, just like the students we have now, they deserve quality facilities, and the fees charged on residential development to mitigate the school facility impact for those developments. These fees only provide a part of the cost to house those students. It's just a fraction of what it actually takes to house students, and state and local school bonds are also needed to have enough funds to adequately house our students. It should be noted that we have actually never collected developer fees as a school district, and we are one of few school districts currently that don't collect fees. I wanted to give you a little list, if I could here.
Actually, I think we received an email from somebody that gave us a list of.
Well, actually, we actually have some very concerned parents who actually are in this business. You know, the educational sector is a small sector, but they're aware of the funding model. And so I believe one of our parents, an employee of Division of State Architects, very aware, and did send a supportive email. Sounds like the board has got it, listing about 10 different school districts locally, including those around us, Albany, Dublin, Oakland, Fremont, are all assessing developer fees. In contrast, Berkeley has never collected developer fees, and school facilities fees currently, as you're aware, are being funded entirely by our parcel tax for Measure H, because the state has not funded its share. Residential development is projected to add about 144 students to the district over the next 5 years from this development, and we currently have facilities needs around $250 million. And increasing as we do additional outreach to our school sites detailing additional needs. Our current total capital assets are around $135 million when we started this. As you saw from the last presentation, we're currently about $125 million. And the fees that we propose to recover for the district are about $2.75 over the next 5 years. Based on the costs outlined in the plan, developer fees will only cover a portion of the cost, as we said, and we are asking the board to approve at our next board meeting the levying of the maximum amount of level 1 fees at $3.48 and 0.56 cents for commercial. Our additional need around developer fees is listed here. It can only be used for new students from new development. Developer fees actually do not cover the entire cost, as we said again, and we want to make sure that the model that we are proposing is one that we bring to the school district that relieves the local resident of covering the entire share of facilities. And to do that, we want to make sure we participate in the state bond, and we're doing that now, as well as bringing this issue to you today for developer fees. Finally, we'll end with any questions and answers that you may have.
Tim, you've got like 4 more minutes.
That was like the shortest Director White presentation that ever happened. That's great.
Yes, I listen to feedback.
Timothy, can you explain level 1 and level 2 to me again? What does that mean?
I'm going to ask my staff to come up and give us a little.
And are we applying? Are we a level 1 or level 2? I didn't. Just trying my best to understand that.
Hi, I'm Kevin Sullivan with School Facility Consultants. Level 1 fees are the basic statutory fee. As we mentioned, they're $3.48 per square foot, and that's a capped amount. The state determines that's the maximum under the level 1 structure that it on residential construction. Level 2 is an unlimited fee, and there are several requirements that a district has to demonstrate in order to collect a level 2 fee. The idea is that it's in excess of the level 1 amount. At this point, I don't believe that Berkeley meets all of the test requirement for invoking level 2 fees.
There's also a level 3 fee, and one of the interesting things about this, about level 3 fees, is that that developers actually supported the passage of the new state bond, Prop 51, and developers supported it across the state because there was a move to charge developers level 3 fees, which are pretty much the full fare for the cost of facilities. So in lieu of being held for the full cost of facilities, developers did support Prop 51, and the quid pro quo would be there would be no accessing of level 3 fees given the passage of a state bond.
Director Powell. Do you
Okay, I'll follow up with the next. I guess my concern, and both ongoing and why we didn't do it before, why, of course, our city was really quiet about this, but how we keep the lines of communication open between the city planner and projects and our school district. How do we keep those lines of communication open in terms of what is anticipated, projected, so that we also have a heads up in advance versus it's already there? What would you suggest?
So the superintendent and I have engaged discussions with the city manager. It's a developer fee, and the collection of developer fees is something that's routinely done. So we've got many examples of successful school districts that have done it, and typically there's 2 different ways to do it, and we've talked about that with the city manager. They can be collected as a part of the collection process of fees and permits with the city. And some school districts elect to have the fees paid directly to the district, and then after the fees are paid to the district, developers pay the fee to the city individually. And so we have either option available to us, and we're exploring which one is most advantageous.
Director Powell.
Hi. I know we pulled this item last time because there was some questions about making sure to communicate with the city about how this fits into their plans. And so can you just report to us about those conversations? And
yeah, I think there was some concern from the developer community. An individual, Mr. Rhodes, had expressed us that we hadn't actually reached out to them, and they were unaware, other than the formal notice that we were required to give for 2 weeks in advance of the public hearing. That was the notice they received, and so there was never a personal touch in terms of forecasting what the district's plans were. And so it was kind of it was requested that we go back and make that personal touch. We've reached out. We have yet to actually schedule an engagement with the developer community itself, but we've offered that invitation, and we've already started the engagement with the city itself to make sure that we are communicating, and one hand knows what the other hand's doing.
Do you have a sense of how the level 1 fees compare, even just roughly, with the other fees that the city charges developers?
Well, I will say that, you know, we had a lot of conversation about Harrow Way, and that was probably one of my introductions here. And the community benefits on Harrow Way were pretty extensive, I would say. In excess of $20, $30 a foot, and I don't want to be quoted, but I know they were much in excess of the $3.48 that we're leveling against them. And so how that $3.40 stacks up against the other fees, I don't know what the total of those would actually be, but I would offer, similar to Mr. Fretz, that the evidence that we see based on development here hasn't been accelerated as a fact of not charging developer fees, and so we don't believe it'll be affected as a byproduct of charging fees.
Okay, and just to sort of recap where I understand we are. So, and just to sort of I guess make clear, we started this process publicly about a year ago. We authorized the funding for this study. There was an article in Berkeley side about it. There was Mr. Fretz, who you mentioned, who's a parent, wrote an op-ed about it. We've had it on our public agenda in one way or another several times over the past year. And it was on the agenda last week. It is on the agenda today. And I appreciate your efforts, and Dr. Evans, to reach out to the city and make sure that, as a courtesy, all affected stakeholders are completely aware of what the district's plans are. So I think it's appropriate that we give you the time to do that. And just speaking for myself, I look forward to this item coming back to us on the 11th to consider for approval.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, President Alper, because I don't think this, I was kind of surprised that this came as a surprise to the developer community, because we have been talking about it. You've been working on the report. I don't know, we contracted you, I think, at least 6 months ago. And I think we all know that the good schools in Berkeley, the high quality schools in Berkeley, are a draw to people wanting to live here. And one of the reasons why it is such a profitable place to build residential and commercial property is directly linked to our schools. And so especially learning that there are so few districts in the region that don't charge developer fees, it seems more like there's been kind of the developers have gotten kind of a boon for a while in this area, and this is just the right thing to do to support our schools. So I'm really appreciate you took this on right when you got here, and I think it's taken a lot longer than you anticipated, and longer than we did. So I also look forward to supporting this.
Thank you.
I stole Dr. Evans' thunder in terms of the recap,
No,
but
I just wanted to add one more thing that we'll bring this back. We will be bringing this back in January for a hearing, and then also for it to be passed.
January the 11th.
Yes.
thank you, Director White.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So now we have item 14.2. So my vice president has abandoned me tonight, but the rest of us can discuss the. So as you know from the calendar, we're not having a traditional retreat, but we're going to have 2 study sessions, one in February and one in March. But in the absence of any other sort of dedicated time for discussing how we want to run our meetings and reviewing and recommitting ourselves to our meeting norms and discussing whether there's any suggestions or requests that you all would like to make of myself and Dr. Evans and Vice President Daniels, we wanted to put this on the agenda to have that discussion. So what we put in the packet was the meeting norms themselves that are on the back of every agenda, and then the actual board bylaws that we recently updated that discuss our governance standards generally. So I wanted to sort of open the discussion to whether anybody wanted to propose any changes or had any thoughts about anything related to this item.
No, I think the norms are, you know, I read what did you say, the piece, there was 2 documents that were sent, governance standards and school board norms. I think those are perfectly fine, and I agree to follow them. I think we all do. And I think we've been conducting ourselves in such a way, too.
Yeah, I do appreciate the fact, I think, that that this board, when we do disagree, do so courteously. A few jokes aside, but none that are meant in a malicious or malintent way. And I think that just having come from the California School Board Association, you do hear about boards that conduct themselves quite differently. And I think that it's a valuable, so I think the norms have been working to date, and I would expect them to work for us in the future. I do think that it's healthy for us to disagree, but I think it's as healthy for us to try to respect the fact that our disagreements are all rooted with the same desire to do what is best for our students and for our district.
Yeah, I think the norms are good. I think we all just really appreciate the fact that we are a healthy governing board, and it I don't know, it nourishes our being able to get a lot of work done. So I think the norms are good. I wanted to mention, in the broader question, I did appreciate how last year we had we had talked about having a board kind of evaluation, not just the meeting evaluation, but kind of an opportunity to kind of assess the year. And I don't know if we plan to do that. I don't know if others feel it's necessary, but I do actually feel it's valuable occasionally to not, I think it's really great. We did this meeting evaluation. Sorry, I'm so tired tonight. But I think I just wanted to ask what the thoughts were, the conversations around doing some kind of an evaluation, or go through the norms and say, how are we doing with these norms, kind of thing.
Yeah, well so we had Dr. Evans and Josh and I had a pretty brief conversation about it, but one thing we talked about doing was, well, we've decided to, unless there's strong objection from the group, to not do the end of meeting evaluations, but to do a couple other things. One is to work on, and this was the first meeting, so we'll get better at this. I'll get better at this, at letting this happen. Having the superintendent frame each discussion or action item, not only with what it's going to be, not with necessarily what the substance of it is going to be, but what staff is looking for from the board, and then at the end of that item, reflecting back, what he heard, and whether, and so that it's almost like an immediate evaluation. Did we do? You just said you know, I just said I wanted to get the answers to these 3 questions. We just had the half-hour discussion. Did we get the answers to those 3 questions? That's kind of right. That's sort of what we talked about trying to do as an immediate evaluation. And then we talked about maybe every 5 or 6 meetings, putting an item on the agenda to evaluate where we are in the norms. Josh's suggestion was don't put it last on the agenda when everybody's tired, but actually put it first and have a real discussion about, you know, how are we doing on time? How are we doing on framing the items, you know, the things that we particularly care about. So those are sort of general thoughts, but I'd love feedback. Director Levy-Cutler.
So explain again how you plan to put this in the front part of the agenda?
I just mean if we have a periodic review or evaluation of how we're doing.
Oh, it's periodic.
To put it on the agenda, just like this was, the meeting norms, but we put this at the end of the meeting. I mean, it's not that late, so we're not too exhausted. But to not signal that this isn't something that we don't really care that much about, so we're going to stick it at the end of the agenda, but to actually say for one meeting, or for the first discussion item, we're going to spend half an hour really assessing how we're doing so far this year and whether there's things we could be doing better.
Well, I think one of the things that we did when we also evaluated ourselves as a board at the end of the year, we also looked at how much time we spent on instructional, on facilities, on budget. And so I think that would also help us in terms of we as a board where we're spending most of our time. And I don't know, Liz, if we do have a record of how much time we've spent. So we could look at that in whether it's January 11th, just a reflection in terms of we as a board, this is, you know, I don't know, we keep a running record with how many policies or things that we've done in the year, that it's also a reflection. I mean, because we do a lot of work and a lot of discussions, and I don't know, it helps, keeps us track of where our focus as a board is.
Absolutely, I'm glad you mentioned that because we talked about doing that too, and so we'll figure that out, a way to present that information, and then we can talk about if the numbers seem to be way off in terms of what our priorities are. Karen?
I think more in line with what Director Levy-Cutler says is that, you know, I think we as a board do work fairly well together, and I would think that if we had an issue with an individual board member, that we work closely enough in the last couple of years that we would have that kind of conversation offline. You know, if someone really irritated me, I don't know if I want to be breaking that down in public unless I really felt that it was something that the community really needed to hear. And mostly it's, you know, you interrupted me 5 times, or I saw you roll your eyes when you did that. And I don't know, that to me is really not a helpful discussion to have in public in most cases, when what you're really trying to do is to further your relationship, not kind of break it in front of everybody in the world, though I guess there are times that some board members in other districts have felt that they needed to do that. I find it a lot more effective to focus on, are we doing the work of the district in the way that in terms of how we wish to do it. And I think what happened, so I like the idea of framing all the time. I will say that a lot of times we get discussion items that's really, I don't really know that staff is asking for us for anything. It's receiving an report, or really just, here is something that we know will interest you. Do you want to ask us questions? As opposed to, we're really asking you for direction. And my concern is that, you know, sometimes that's what we want to do. You know, it's not necessarily that you know, that there's some juicy topics here. And a lot of the real work happens at the administrative level. I don't want us to start micromanaging that. But I do think that, you know, there are topics that our community hearing about, not just from staff, but hearing our kind of take or questions about it is useful, even if it isn't in response to staff asking us for direction. As part of that, I would like, maybe as part of what you want to do is maybe to focus on what are some of the topics that board members would like to have on the agenda. We've done this in the past with study sessions. I know that, for example, the Anti-Racism Task Force, as well as federal mandates, will be bringing disproportionality in our special education program to light. And, you know, that would be the kind of thing that there might not be any specific direction that's being requested at the time, but hearing what board members have to say about what they've heard from constituents, what they've heard from the community, and what their concerns are in general, I think would be helpful. And I've certainly, heard that with differential learning, so I think particularly when those are, there are topics that you hear from our community or they're concerned about in terms of curriculum and teaching, that's an important thing to be able to have the time to do. Because I do think we spent a lot of time on the business side of the district, where I think it would be helpful for staff in the community to hear those discussions around the academic side as well.
Thanks. Judy?
Yeah, I think along those lines, we talked about this one-on-one, but I guess just to say it here, I would really love to, I really appreciate the efficiency of time, and you and I brainstormed a couple of ways that we could possibly hear snapshots from what's going on at our school sites. I know there used to be those teaching and learning presentations, and they started getting long. I think that was even before Donald came. It was certainly before I was on the board. So maybe not that, but something else that would allow us to hear from our students, our teachers, a little bit about what's going on. That would, I think, really help ground some of the conversations we're having at the board meeting with some of the experiences that are happening at the school sites. So that's one thing. And then I also mentioned to you, and I don't know, others might not agree with this, but for me personally, when and I feel like to some extent this is a little bit discouraged by the culture of this board, but I really enjoy having a little discourse between us. So I feel like a lot of our conversations now are questions to staff, and really sometimes I want to hear from staff, but I also want to have a chance to hear your thinking. I oftentimes come here not completely with my mind made up, and your questions often help give me a hint to what you're thinking, and that helps, that definitely influences my opinion, because we all come here with different experiences. But even just having more of a chance to have, we might not have a question, but we might have something, oh, yeah, like, this is what I'm thinking, what are you thinking? And there being kind of more of a culture for that. So I'm not sure if that's in our norms or not, or how that would be reflected in our norms, but I just thought I'd mention that because I get a lot from what you all have to say.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it too, and both things. I think we did talk about this a little bit. I really like the idea of the snapshots, and I wasn't on the board for the teaching and learning things that you mentioned, but President Leva Cutler started in the last few months having short 15-minute presentations before 7:30, without necessarily any comments or questions from us, but just a way for, as you said, for students, teachers, principals to present on something. If we can finish closed session by 7:15, see a snapshot presentation and then start the meeting.
I think there's also our school district, there's constant videos being produced and presentations being produced, examples of our teachers teaching that between 7 and 7:30 can be displayed, to our public. And, we have some great videos of our teachers showing demonstrations. This is Common Core, this is math. I mean, those are the kinds of things that it's helpful for the public to also see. And I think we have those, or some of our students' productions that also can be showed between 7 and 7:30, at least while the people are gathering. It's something to show both the people who are watching online and the people who are watching on television.
I think it's a great idea.
Or even snippets from some of when, for example, when we had the presentation, I guess it was last board member on using technology in the classroom. I mean, that, there was a lot of that I did not know happened. Well, that's something to me that, I think staff could kind of clip that 15 minutes, and that could be not a formal video, but just something that's being shown again. Just that standalone piece between 7 or 7:30. And I think there's quite a few of those kinds of presentations that, being replayed, because it is an opportunity for parents to kind of get, some more information about what's happening in the classroom, I think would be beneficial.
Yeah, it's like the commercials at the movie theaters. Like you're sitting there anyway.
Yeah, exactly. You might as well make use of that space.
Evelyn, Pasquale, Javetta, is there anything that you want to add that would make the meetings better from your perspective? Will you turn your mic on?
As a principal in the district, I had the opportunity to do the teacher in learning, bringing my staff up and sharing what we're doing at the sites. And I think at the time we rolled out the everyday math. And so that was really interesting, and PBIS work. I think that would be interesting to be able to learn and see what we're doing at the sites. The LCAP funding, the money that we're spending on students. And I think that would be interesting to see what we're doing at our schools, and principals, teachers, students share where our funding is being spent.
Great.
I like that you do it 17.
Yeah.
If we're out.
Pasquale, I know you got, no? Is there anything you want to? Okay. No, Javetta? Charles, Liz? Anything? All right. All right. Now, thank you. Now we have an opportunity for public comment again. There were a few people. Mr. Soto Castellanos, I see you in the audience, and you did not get to speak earlier. Paula, well, maybe raise your hand if you're here to speak. Okay. Okay. Why don't we start with you, Bill? And we will give, so there's 4 people, so we'll do 3 minutes each.
I'm Bill Soto Castellanos, 4th generation Mexican from San Francisco. Your discussion on the undocumented worker, undocumented students, I'm somewhat, without casting aspersions on anyone, I'm disturbed by the language of thinking of us, generally speaking, as undocumented. That's a term that's so meaningless to us who are Mexicans, given treaties like the Treaty of Hidalgo, given the very land I'm standing on happens to be occupied Mexico. So the concept, I'm sure glad a whole bunch of students didn't hear this. And I didn't learn this at Berkeley High, nor did I learn it at Burbank nor Columbus, because not a word was spoken, not anything in the textbooks even mentioned us, which made me feel somewhat ashamed of being a Mexican. Not a peep, not a sound, nothing. And to find out so many years later that we are now classified as undocumented is obscene. To be nice. I'm not trying to get ugly with anyone. That's not my thing. But I listened to all of the comments tonight with great interest. No one has mentioned that this issue we're talking about goes back 3 or 4 years. That it was the Obama administration that was sending people to incarcerated situations. Nobody mentioned a word about that, as if it didn't exist. Trump merely inherited the stuff. It's been going on. But I cannot and will not fault you as a board or as an administration because you're so busy. How would you know this? Only a retired 81-year-old person who has access to the screen or the social internet would understand some of it. Now, I don't understand all of it. But in the limited time I have, it's a challenge. And I, for one, an 81-year-old man who happens to be Mexican, I welcome the federal government. I welcome ICE to any discussion, any place, anywhere, because my taxes pay their wages. And if we don't understand that, then what are we in the business of? The federal government is us. We've allowed criminals to take it over while we're watching other stuff on TV. But you're not the problem. You are not the problem. You're part of the solution. And I am part of the solution. And rest assured, 35 years in the labor movement, I'm ready to do battle with ICE anytime, any place, anywhere. anytime they want to come and grab my behind, I'm ready for them. Because they happen to be on my land. They're the immigrants. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Castellanos.
I'm Tanya Kapner, and I wanted to speak. I support, having passed the Sanctuary District motion, the policy to support students with or without papers, but I think that there needed to be public comment and input before the vote on that, because I think there need to be some key additions. I agree with the comments earlier that there needs to be something clearly stating, do not give the ICE students information under any circumstances. I think that would be the strongest and clearest language, and that's what needs to be there, so the young people aren't waiting to see if it's at the superintendent's discretion or this or that, or you know, whatever proposals Trump is trying to make in terms of racist laws. This has to be enforced over and beyond that, because our students have to be safe. I'm speaking on behalf of the Equal Opportunity Now by Any Means Necessary caucus also to urge and demand that the school board additionally add demands in defense of the youth, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival, the DACA youth, in our schools and in our communities, demand that President Obama should use his presidential authority and pardon the youth and do an executive order or do whatever it takes, just like President Carter pardoned, you know, pardoned thousands of folks that didn't go to the war in Vietnam, that didn't, you know, listen to the draft because they disagreed with that war. This city standing up for the rights of students whose families are immigrants, who may or may not have papers, specifically the DACA youth who gave all their information to the government, who Trump has promised to attack and target when Obama promised them, you know, the work permits, the driver's license. The important gains of coming out of the shadows need to be actual, you know, permanent residency, actual opportunities for citizenship. So I've submitted resolution language that many organizations and groups have been putting forward and raising. And it states, you know, the Berkeley School Board should call on President Obama to use his presidential powers to pardon the DACA and immigrant youth, protect them from Donald Trump's racist campaign to deport these 700,000 plus immigrant students, youth, and young adults. We stand proud with this movement for dignity, equality, and freedom for all. Because if Obama does not use his presidential authority, he's essentially handing them over to Trump, continuing with that policy of deportations that have happened these last years, instead of following on the promise that DACA was for actual citizenship rights for youth who have been in this country many times since a baby, since a child, who know no other country. To risk their deportation is a scandal and would be a moral outrage. So I think it's really imperative that this school board send a strong message to our DACA youth in our schools, that we stand with them, and that we are going to call on the current president to take action before he leaves in support of getting them some kind of legal status, and to make it absolutely difficult for Trump to attack them. I think calling for this and organizing around this will put us in a stronger position, whether or not Obama does it, to defend these youth when Trump comes in with his racist attacks and attempts on immigrants.
Thank you. Who wants to go next? Ms. Falarka? Liz.
Yvette Falarka, Equal Opportunity Now by Any Means Necessary caucus and BAM organizer. I am very glad that Berkeley Unified School District has passed the resolution for sanctuary, but I also believe that the language needs to be much stronger and unequivocal in making clear that we will turn ICE away at any schoolhouse door, regardless of any court order, especially considering the fact that Donald Trump, when he becomes president, is bound to change the laws. And the Holocaust was carried out legally because fascist Germany was controlled by Hitler, and he changed the laws to then make legal anything that he did. So we need to take a moral and unequivocal stand and not just take a legalistic stand in defense of our immigrant students and workers and community members. Second, it is imperative that we make the demand now on Obama, now while he is still in office, while he still has the moral and the legal and political authority to protect the 740,000 DACA immigrant youth who right now are the most vulnerable and endangered of our communities because they believed him when he told them that if they came out of the shadows, that they would be protected by him, that they could share all their information about themselves, about their family members, share their fingerprints. Some of them have shared biometrics and DNA swabs and samples. All that will be in the hands of Donald Trump and his government and his racist and fascist supporters. Obama has the power now to act while he is still president, to make sure that those almost 1 million of our young people who are in our schools, who are in our communities, are protected. Because sanctuary alone by the school district will not be enough. It won't be. We've got to carry out action to defend our students. But the president right now, with a stroke of his pen, could protect those students. He's already issued pardons for other people. You know who Obama's already pardoned? He's pardoned people for conspiracy to commit money laundering, for distribution of methamphetamine, for conspiracy to commit larceny and theft of military property, for conspiracy to possess the intent to distribute heroin. These are people who President Obama has already used his authority to protect from any future legal action. He ought to do at least this for 1 million of our young people. And to not do that is the epitome of betrayal. We encourage everyone to join us to march to call on Obama and hold him accountable too, to protect our young people. And we invite everyone to come this Saturday to march at 12 noon at the Fruitvale BART station to the federal building, because this is the time for action.
Ms. Phillips.
Thank you.
Okay, it's late. I got to get up and come to work in the morning. I have yet to see a budget report that does not reflect a savings due to classified vacancies. So when you look at slide number 5 in the budget report, that $403,000 is offset by the $422,000 of classified vacancies. We have 82 vacancies to date. The last report that I received, we had 76 vacancies, and that was in October. A majority of the vacancies on this list were open since the beginning of the school year. So that means that we're not servicing our students, but that we are servicing them with unqualified, unskilled, untrained labor. The special ed vacancies on the list of 82 that I just received today, there are 18 vacancies in special ed positions, 2 of which are at LeConte. One of the LeConte positions was approved to be a bilingual position, and that one has been unfilled, and I think that one has been unfilled since last year. So this report that I have only reflects the dates that they started the recruitment for this year. It doesn't talk about last year, because we have a transportation router position that's been vacant since last year. And I want to say the beginning of last year. We have 3 vacancies at Berkeley High School for special ed positions. We have 11 vacancies for ECE, IAs, early childhood education assistants. We have 16 vacancies in the after-school program, and we were just told that we need to fill those with qualified staff. There are 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, maybe 9 vacancies in nutrition services, and we're working with the Deputy Superintendent and Nutrition Services to fill those vacancies. And we were hoping to bring a plan forward at this board meeting, but we're going to do it next board meeting, hopefully. School bus drivers has been difficult to fill, always. And right now, we have the transportation director and the manager driving the bus. We want you to move staff to fill these vacancies with qualified staff immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Mr. Williams.
I know, right? I know it's late, and I don't want to take much more of your time. I am at a bit of a, I guess, rock and a hard place, because I don't know where to go next in finding out more information about my daughter's case. You know, I understand that there is a shift in administrators going on now, but I still have not been contacted, updated, or even know where everything, where it stands. And so I'm asking you in front of me to help me with that via email, phone call, because, you know, again, I'm not into naming names and pointing fingers, but the first line of support or defense, however you want to look at it, kind of failed us. And it never reached anywhere further than that. So I don't know if I should be going back to that person, because again, I want that to be a correction and not a disciplinary action on that individual. You know what I mean? I care for administrators, staff. Nobody's perfect. They miss something, they get something wrong, we correct them, support them, and better our system, and not renew. Granted, if it's worth firing, then maybe they shouldn't be here. But there's enough vacancies, from what I just heard, that we don't need any more. So I need help with that, because I need to have answers for my daughter. You know, don't send me home as we're not being able to fulfill my job as a father, as a protector. You know, that's, you know, I think a simple ask. Again, you know, I want to support you guys in what you do. I consider myself a valued parent. You know, I think I put in the time to prove that, and there's other parents out there that are like me, that want to help and want to support. I like to bring them out of the woodworks. You know, I know we have a lot of things to deal with in our district, and a lot of it comes from, I think, lack of communication and support. So any way I can help in that, I'm available for that. But, you know, again, I need you guys' help too. Okay? Thank you.
I'm Anaya's mom, so he spoke.